the great swordsman of Marvel. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction, so don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author, we're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 26 The Expo. Having escaped the torment of palladium poisoning, Tony was eager to find Pepper Potts immediately. Agent Callison then left, and a phone call reached Tony's home. Hey, Tony, do you remember me? Ivan? How did you get out of prison? Hearing that familiar voice, Tony was momentarily stunned. Never mind that. I just want to tell you that the history of the Stark family will be rewritten tonight. I will make you pay for the crimes your father committed against my family over the past 40 years within 40 minutes. After saying this, Ivan hung up the phone. Tony was somewhat dazed, and after a while, he tracked down Ivan's location through the phone call. It was at Justin Hammer's company. I see. Tony fell into deep thought, and after a moment, a glint flashed in his eyes, as if he had suddenly understood. He put on his Iron Man armor and rushed towards the Stark Industries Expo. Pepper, you absolutely can't be hurt. At this moment, Chen Feng was extremely excited, sitting upright and watching the lottery draw in front of him. To get a better hero, Chen Feng used up 2 lottery chances, planning a double draw tonight. Even when facing the Hulk, Chen Feng had never been this nervous. He started spinning, his eyes glued to the dial. The spinning speed slowed, and Chen Feng's heart nearly leaped into his throat. Congratulations, host, you have obtained the Heart of Madness, Non. The system's voice rang out, and Chen Feng felt a pang of disappointment. After all, Non wasn't an Ascended One. However, the all-new Non still filled Chen Feng with anticipation. Non, from the ancient Ionian organization, the Order of Balance, carried out a sacred mission to maintain world balance. Born in Del, he emerged rapidly from the womb and swiftly escaped the midwife's grasp, displaying immense power from birth. As Non grew older, his energy increased, and both his speed and strength improved dramatically. Later, he entered the Order of Balance to cultivate. Non even mastered the powerful mysteries of lightning, transforming into one more chance to draw a prize. System, don't let me down this time. You looked at the spinning wheel and silently prayed. The wheel started spinning quickly, and soon the exciting moment arrived again. Hopefully, host, you have obtained the Voidwalker, Cassidon. Upon hearing the system's voice, Chen Feng finally smiled with joy. Great. Excellent. Cassidon is a member of the Void Clan. Even if he isn't an Ascended One, he has essentially reached the strength of a semi-Ascended One, which is terrifying. Especially Cassidon in his peak state. His power is unimaginable. He is born with the ability to control space, though slightly weaker than the Space Stone. This time, he still didn't get an Ascended One. Or to be more precise, he drew an even more powerful God-level hero, but compared to Chen Feng, the 2 new heroes are also very powerful. Especially the Voidwalker, Cassidon. As a member of the Void Clan, he is born with the ability to master unfathomable spatial power, and his strength is much stronger than other heroes. At the same time, upon learning that Ivan had been rescued by Justin Hammer, Tony donned his new armor and sped towards the Stark Industries Expo. Tony had a premonition. The revenge Ivan spoke of must be at the Expo, because he had promised Hammer to attend the Expo in Monaco. Damn it. I was careless. How could I make such a mistake? Platinum. Tony's biggest worry right now was Pepper Potts. His attitude towards Pepper hadn't been good before, sometimes even terrible, but Pepper's place in Tony's heart had already reached its peak. Whoosh! Tony streaked across the sky like a streak of light, rushing towards the Industrial Expo with all his might. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the latest steel armor developed by our Hammer military industry, made of a brand new titanium alloy, inside. At the Industrial Expo, Justin Hammer was introducing the Iron Man armor Ivan had made for him. His confident smile and assertive tone revealed his absolute self-assurance. Colonel Rhodes was also at the Expo, standing on the same stage as Hammer's Iron Man armor, wearing Patriot armor. Just as Hammer was enthusiastically explaining, a silver and red Iron Man armor descended from the sky and landed on the stage. It was Tony, who had rushed over. Colonel Rhodes asked in surprise, "Hey, Tony, what are you doing here? Rhodes, I was wondering what you were doing here? Are you a model hammer hired? Here for a fashion show? Or wearing my armor? Since when does a colonel have to do this kind of thing to make money? Are you in a financial crisis now? Tony bombarded him with questions, looking at Rhodes in his Mark I armor with utter bewilderment. This barrage of questions left Colonel Rhodes completely dumbfounded. What the hell is going on? This was simply the US government showcasing its power to the world by equipping the Iron Man suit with weapons from Han Ying Industries. Since they'd taken a favor from Hammer, it seemed perfectly reasonable for them to help promote Hammer's military industry. This was also why Colonel Rhodes was at the Stark Industrial Exposition. Tony? You've come at the right time. Seeing Tony, Justin Hammer quickly approached him, eager to boast, "Come and see my newly invented Iron Man suit, you'll be amazed." Tony said before that if he could come up with a decent new invention, he could participate in the Industrial Exposition, and now he's done it, and he feels he's done even better than Tony. Hammer, what's going on with yours? Just as Tony was about to mock Hammer, he suddenly realized that all the Iron Man suits were now aimed at him, even Colonel Rhodes. Fuck. What the hell? With many ordinary people standing behind him, Tony realized that Ivan was behind it all, and without hesitation, he quickly flew away from the venue. Tony, my suit is out of control. What happened? The instant Tony left, all the Iron Man suits followed, flying away from the venue together. Colonel Rhodes was included, of course. This was why Colonel Rhodes was so shocked. It wasn't under his control at all. These Iron Man suits relentlessly pursued Tony, unleashing a barrage of weapons and missiles. Fortunately, Tony's suit was brand new. Thanks to its superior performance, Tony dodged the hail of bullets. Damn it, Hammer. Looking at the dense swarm of suits following behind, Tony couldn't help but curse, "Damn it. You're all just idiots." Chapter 27 Explosion. If it weren't for that jerk Hammer getting Ivan out of prison, none of this would have happened. Actually, Hammer only trained Ivan to defeat Tony, who looked down on him, and to prove himself superior. After all, Ivan had mastered the arc reactor technology, and combined with Hammer's military capabilities, they could definitely create an Iron Man suit that surpassed Tony's. With so many Iron Man suits behind, Tony wanted to attack, but they were still in the city, and the large population would easily cause casualties. Therefore, Tony flew towards a sparsely populated area. Along the way, using the advantageous terrain, he destroyed a large number of Iron Man soldiers. Just then, Colonel Rhodes suddenly rushed out, knocking Tony from the sky, and the two fell together into a small, semicircular building. Rat-a-tat-tat, Colonel Rhodes pressed down on Tony, firing wildly at his body, a small Gatling gun spraying countless bullets, as if trying to overwhelm Tony. Fortunately, the new armor's performance in all aspects had been comprehensively improved, and the power of ordinary bullets couldn't cause it any damage. Taking advantage of this moment, Tony grabbed the small Gatling gun on Colonel Rhodes' armor, slightly deflecting its muzzle. The two became entangled, attacking each other relentlessly, using all kinds of weapons, even fists and feet, in an extremely fierce battle. 837 At this time, Tasha, who had been assigned another mission by Nick Fury, discovered through some investigation and clues that Ivan was hiding inside the Hammer Industries building. So, Tasha quickly arrived there. With her agile skills, she easily defeated the security guard at the entrance. Soon she found the Iron Man's control room, but Ivan was no longer there. Without any hesitation, Tasha went to the computer controlling the Iron Man armor and used her superb skills to disable Colonel Rhodes' automatic attack program. Thanks to Tasha's help from a distance, Colonel Rhodes, who was wrestling with Tony, finally returned to normal. "Tony, I think I'm alright." Colonel Rhodes laughed excitedly and removed his mask. "Good thing you're alright, brother." Tony also removed his mask and looked at Colonel Rhodes, saying seriously, "But next we need to think about how to capture the damn Ivan." "Oh no, be careful." Just as the two were discussing, a large number of Iron Man's soldiers descended from the sky, surrounding them. Tony shouted a warning. With Colonel Rhodes' cooperation, Tony used the laser weapon on his wrist to eliminate all the enemies. Currently, this is equipment only available on the new armor. It is also a special weapon exclusive to the new energy source, extremely powerful and terrifyingly lethal. Ivan, dead. Tony and Colonel Rhodes, who were watching this scene, widened their eyes in disbelief. They were stunned. Seeing Ivan, who had been suppressing them, being killed so easily, both of them were dumbfounded. Throughout the whole process, Judging from Chen Feng's appearance, it seemed that he hadn't used much of his strength. Too strong, but, Tony, I've already taught you a lesson. I don't ask for too much, just give me another Iron Man armor. However, remember to make it according to Mindy's measurements. That little girl has been nagging me about it for ages. Chen Feng turned his head, looked at Colonel Rhodes, and continued, Colonel Rhodes, right? I remember you're the U.S. Army's Minister of Weapon Development. Here. Give me a set of your latest developed weapons, consider it my reward. I'm a very generous person. Generous? Shameless. Utterly shameless. Tony and Colonel Rhodes cursed inwardly. I add SC of course. Chen Feng didn't know what they were thinking. If he did, he would definitely refute them. What's wrong with me saving you? Heroes are human too, they need to eat. How can you do good deeds without getting rewarded? Chen Feng's personality wouldn't do something thankless, so after asking for his reward, he was about to leave. They hadn't walked far when Chen Feng suddenly stopped, saying threateningly, remember what I said, don't keep me waiting too long. I don't have much patience, especially not with you, Tony. There's still no news about the armor from last time. After Chen Feng disappeared, Tony and Colonel Rhodes finally came to their senses, exchanging bewildered glances, speechless. This is extortion. Absolutely. Colonel Rhodes remained stunned for a long time before slowly saying, were we just robbed? Tony, looking dejected, replied in a low voice, maybe, you could say that. Actually, before Chen Feng arrived, Tony had thought of a way to defeat Ivan, but Chen Feng was too strong, killing Ivan in just a few breaths, giving Tony no chance to implement his plan. Tony was almost in tears. Damn it. How many times has this happened? What did I, Tony Stark, do to deserve this? How did I end up like this? God, can't you just leave me alone? Colonel Rhodes suddenly shouted urgently, hey, Tony, look at Ivan's armor. The arc reactor on Ivan's armor is flashing red, it looks like something's about to happen. Run. It's going to explode. Tony's expression changed drastically, he yelled, and bursts of scorching energy from his feet, flying away. Colonel Rhodes followed closely behind Tony, rushing out together. The moment he left, the armor below exploded with a deafening roar, a terrifying shockwave sweeping through the air, raising clouds of dust and turning the entire building to ash. Oh no, Pepper's in danger. Tony's screen displayed the locations of all the Hammer Industries armors, and one of them was right next to Pepper. The last of the energy within the Iron Man armor erupted, and Tony sprinted towards Pepper's location at his current maximum speed. Whoosh! A dazzling arc was drawn in the air. At this moment, the dim night sky appeared even more beautiful. Chen Feng stood with his hands behind his back on a building hundreds of meters high, watching Tony speed away, and sighed. The power of love. Chen Feng, possessing the abilities of Cassidy the Voidwalker, could freely traverse the void, equivalent to the mythical god who could travel to the ends of the earth. The night was still very beautiful. Ji Guo stood on the high-rise building, gazing at the starry sky. The future. He was determined to explore the starry sky. This was the kind of adventure a man should have. In this space, the steel soldiers that had fallen to various locations all exploded, like a fireworks display, beautiful and unsightly. Tony, who had arrived just in time, managed to get the steel soldiers near Zioban away from danger before they exploded. Tony, who had been watching Zioban, flew to high-rise building before finally setting down. However, Zioban's expression was very serious. He showed no joy whatsoever at Tony's timely arrival. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Menu. Tony, do you know how worried I am every time you do something dangerous? I'm constantly on edge, and I can't stand this behavior anymore. Seeing Ruo Zio's angry expression, Tony caught her little toy, looked into her eyes, and said affectionately, I know you've always taken care of me. You always come to my aid when I'm in danger. You deserve better treatment. Yes, Tony, you should give Miss Pei better treatment. At this moment, Colonel Rhodes suddenly appeared around the two of them, a dangerous smile on his face. At the same time, Yi also arrived at some point, looking at Tony and Zio and said solemnly, it's dangerous to show affection in public. I'm not wrong. Showing affection in public leads to a quick death. That's a golden rule. I'm mainly here to remind you not to forget my things before leaving. Chen Feng added inexplicably, blinked, and smiled meaningfully. Tony, it seems we need to deal with Chen Feng's matter first, Colonel Rhodes shrugged helplessly. Although he currently holds some power in the military, if you were to casually give away new weapons to others and it got out, he would definitely face a court-martial. Don't worry, leave it to me. You can leave now, Tony directly dismissed him. Damn. This wonderful atmosphere might still be salvageable. Whatever. I'll leave my business to you. Colonel Rhodes was quite sensible and soon flew away. Tony watched Rod walk away and said to Little Pepper, okay, baby, let's continue. Back home, Chen Feng saw Mindy fast asleep and had an idea. Mindy had always wanted to go out and play, right? Why not take advantage of this opportunity? He could take her on a trip around the United States. He was sure his father would agree. The next day, early morning, Chen Feng started preparing his food cart, giving it a quick wash. Starting today, Mindy was on school break, and this trip to New Mexico would give them plenty of time to clean up. Time to wake the little sleepyhead. Chen Feng looked at the clean food cart and nodded in satisfaction before going back to his room. The sun was high in the sky, almost shining on Mindy's bottom. She was still fast asleep in bed, showing no signs of waking up. Chen Feng patted Mindy's bottom and whispered in her ear, "Little bug, time to get up. I'm taking you to New Mexico today." Mindy, still sleepy, seemed to hear Chen Feng's words and opened her eyes with difficulty, asking groggily, "Oh, Chen Feng, where are we going?" Mindy's absent-mindedness brought a gentle smile to Chen Feng's face as he patted her head. After a few minutes, Chen Feng finally managed to wake Mindy completely. At this moment, Mindy seemed very excited. Eager to go out and play, she even jumped up happily on the bed and gave Chen Feng a light kiss on the cheek. "Let's go. We're going to New Mexico," Mindy cheered. Chen Feng started the sports car he'd tricked out of Tony last time, turned on the music, and immersed himself in the frenetic energy. When going out, of course, rock music was the way to go. That's what makes for a fun-filled trip. After some time, the two drove to the airport. The distance between New Mexico and New York was quite far, and driving a food truck there would take forever. The result was obvious. Chen Feng decisively chose to fly. As for the car, Chen Feng naturally left it with Tony, temporarily storing it there. The guy owed him a lot of favors. After boarding the plane, the two arrived in New Mexico not long after. New Mexico is located in the southwestern United States. With its dry climate, it's known as the Sunshine State, the Cactus State, and the Charming State. Its scenery is also very charming, with red cliffs, deserts, cacti, and more. It can be said to be a very suitable place for leisure and travel. The first thing Chen Feng did upon arriving in New Mexico was to rent a food truck. After all, taking Mindy around would be a breeze, and a rental car not only solved the problem but also provided food for both of them, a win-win situation. Money talks, no matter where you are. Chen Feng quickly rented a rental car and even prepared the food. "Mindy, let's go." The two set off again, wandering around New Mexico. "Jane, what are we doing coming all this way? It's so hot," Danksy complained to Jane Foster. The sweltering heat of New Mexico was really unsuitable for the beautiful Daisy. She sweated buckets every day here. "Daisy, stop complaining. I've really made a great discovery this time, right here in New Mexico. I can feel it's coming soon, so let's hurry and find something to eat, then continue our research." Jane smiled reassuringly. This trip to New Mexico was mainly to find a storm related to the celestial motion she was researching, the storm that was about to arrive. Once she found that storm, she could prove that her research was correct and that it was real. "Daisy, and I also called Professor Eric. He should arrive in New Mexico tomorrow." "What? You called the professor too? Are you crazy?" Daisy stared at Jane in disbelief, as if she were looking at a lunatic. "Danksy, believe me, the doctor will support me. Those atmospheric disturbances are related to my research," Jane said confidently. Suddenly, a fragrant aroma wafted into her nose. "Wow, what's that smell? It smells so good. Zai, let's go eat there." Jane grabbed Danksy's right hand. Following the aroma, they ran towards the food truck and soon arrived at it. Jane looked at the young Asian businessman in front of her and asked curiously, "Sir, is the smell coming from your truck?" "It smells so good." "Yes, Madam Yuanlin, would you like some?" Chen Feng smiled warmly. "Of course, I want a secret recipe burger and a secret recipe sausage." Jane looked at the menu and quickly ordered what she wanted. I want one. Daisy was also attracted by the aroma and quickly ordered. The next moment, Chen Feng quickly entered cooking mode. His flashy and handsome but practical movements made Jane and Daisy's eyes sparkle as they stared intently. People say that a man is most handsome when he is serious about what he is doing. Jane and Daisy deeply understood this. Handsome, could we exchange phone numbers? At this moment, Daisy looked at Chen Feng shyly and asked cautiously. Daisy, Jane said somewhat angrily. This was really too impolite. Chen Feng maintained his smile and was about to say no problem when Mindy suddenly came to Chen Feng's side with an unhappy look and a somewhat cold attitude. No. He is not like you, so casual. What did you say? Daisy was immediately furious. How dare a little girl insult her like that? Chapter 29 Storm. Damn it. I'm completely innocent. I haven't even touched a man's hand yet, and I finally met a guy I like, and I get lectured by a little brat. Mindy, don't talk nonsense. Apologize to this older sister right now. Chen Feng knew what Mindy was thinking. However, she still had to apologize for saying such things, otherwise it would seem like she had no manners at all. If Frank found out, he would definitely scold him, and might even take Mindy away. But Mindy pouted, feeling wronged, and was reluctant to apologize. There are no buts. You said something wrong, so you have to apologize, otherwise I won't take you out to play next time. Chen Feng's expression was serious and non-committal. Under Chen Feng's reprimand, Mindy reluctantly apologized, then stormed into the food cart, ignoring Chen Feng completely. You stinky Chen Feng, you awful Chen Feng. I'm never going to care about you and other women again. HMPH, Mindy silently vented her anger inside. This is all my fault. I didn't keep an eye on her. To apologize? This meal is on me, okay, Chen Feng said with a smile. It's alright, she's just a kid after all. I won't really hold it against her. Boss, if you're willing to give us a free meal, I'd be happy to. Daisy smiled at Chen Feng, the little deer in her heart finally starting to jump. Wow. Is she really in love? Jane, watching Daisy's infatuation, rolled her eyes helplessly. Jane and Daisy quickly finished eating, praising Chen Feng's cooking. It was definitely the best meal they'd had in New Mexico. Afterwards, thanks to Daisy's persistence, she successfully got Chen Feng's phone number. She originally wanted to have a further conversation with Chen Feng, but Jane directly pulled her away. After all, Jane brought Daisy to New Mexico not to find handsome men, but to investigate and find that storm. Watching the two women walk away, Chen Feng smiled. As expected, Thor was about to arrive on Earth. This trip to New Mexico was finally beginning. Meanwhile, back in her car, Jane resumed her work. As for Daisy, she was lost in a daydream, her mind filled only with Chen Feng's face. Her eyes shone. This Eastern man was handsome, a great cook, and so gentle, the perfect romantic partner. So lucky. She just wondered if Chen Feng had a girlfriend. Jane worked meticulously. Daisy, come help me process this data. A long time passed. No movement. Daisy was still indulging in her infatuation. When Jane turned her head and saw Daisy, she was speechless. She covered her forehead, a deep black line appearing on her face. Almost an hour had passed. My God. This is ridiculous. Helpless, Jane spent another long time working alone, finally determining the storm's arrival time through meticulous calculations. As dusk approached, Dr. Eric arrived in New Mexico. Upon learning that Jane was still chasing the so-called storm, his expression changed, and he immediately advised, Jane, don't do these meaningless things anymore. That wind doesn't exist. Yes, Jane, let's give up. Dangzai, standing beside her, nodded repeatedly, deeply agreeing with Dr. Eric's statement. The atmospheric motion laws are very relevant to my research, and after 17 precise calculations, each one only a few microseconds off, I'm certain I'm accurate. Just trust me this time, doctor. After much persuasion, and with Jane's strong insistence, the doctor finally gave in and agreed to conduct the research with her. Night fell. Daisy drove, following Jane's directions, to a rather desolate place. Jane, are you sure this is the place? It looks so eerie, quite scary. The bareness and silence in the illuminated area made Daisy very uneasy. Just trust me, keep driving. Jane nodded firmly, her eyes fixed on the computer screen in front of her. Jane, I think you should stop. This is pointless, Dr. Eric advised from the side. Just as Jane was about to speak, Daisy in the driver's seat turned around and said anxiously, "Jane, you'd better come and see." "What is that? My God." At that moment, Jane saw a rainbow of colors appear in the sky outside, her face filled with astonishment. Shock. Jane was stunned. She hurriedly climbed out of the car, staring at the light before her, speechless. "I thought you were just talking about a faint aurora." Dr. Eric, seeing this scene, took a deep breath, his face seemingly incredulous. After a while, Jane shouted, "Quick, quick, quick. Drive." The next moment, Daisy, receiving the command, immediately started the car and sped towards the aurora. Although she wanted to leave this hellish place, it concerned Jane's efforts and research over the past few months, so Daisy had to go. The car raced across the desert, quickly reaching the aurora. The sky, which had been shining brightly, suddenly formed a massive storm. Whoosh! Terrifying winds and powerful suction seemed to pull the car directly into them. It was the might of nature. "Daisy, what are you doing?" Just as Jane was about to take a picture with her camera, she realized she was getting further and further away from the storm center. Daisy shouted, "I don't want to lose my life for a mere 6 credits. With that, she drove the car, quickly rushing towards the outer edge of the storm. At that moment, crack, the sky cracked open. Lightning flashed and thunder roared within the storm, as if a god was about to descend, and a fierce gale arose. Even the car's headlights couldn't bring light into such deep darkness. Daisy could barely make out the immediate road ahead as she sped along. "Damn it, is that a person?" In the dim light, a blurry figure appeared. Daisy quickly swerved the steering wheel to the other side. Thump, a muffled sound. Even in the storm, it was quite noticeable. She had clearly hit someone. Daisy immediately stopped the car. At the same moment, Jane and Daisy stared at each other for a long time. As if snapping out of their daze, they grabbed flashlights. Jane got out of the car to look for the person she had hit. "I think legally it's your fault," Daisy said hurriedly, her face filled with panic, following Jane. "Quick, get the first aid kit," Jane said to Daisy behind her, looking at the blonde man lying on the ground. She murmured with worry, "Please, please, please don't die, please." Daisy, who had brought the first aid kit, carefully examined the man on the ground and asked suspiciously, "Where did he come from?" Before Jane could answer, suddenly, the man on the ground woke up, opened his eyes, and looked at the unfamiliar surroundings and the unfamiliar woman in front of him. However, Chapter 30 Shock. In the blink of an eye, the man collapsed again. Jane looked at the blonde man with curiosity, muttering to herself, "Where did he come from?" "Jane, doctor, come quick," Daisy shouted, because the blonde man had woken up again. And this time, he seemed to have fully recovered. Thor spun around, looking around, shouting, "Hammer! Father! Heimdall, I know you can hear me. Open the rainbow bridge, let me go back." But his roars were completely useless. Dead silence. The air remained dead silent. No one paid him any attention. Thor turned around, looked at Jane and the other two, and asked sleepily, "What country is this?" "Elfheim? Nornheim." Daisy took out her stun gun, aimed it at Thor, and replied, "New Lucia." Thor stared at the small red dot on his face, his brow furrowed. "You bastard. How dare you threaten me, Thor, with such a small weapon?" Crack, sparks flew. Daisy fired her stun gun. Thor, having lost his divine body and become an ordinary person, was unfortunately knocked unconscious by the human weapon, the stun gun. Jane and Dr. Eric were dumbfounded, their mouths agape as they stared at Daisy. "Stupid. Holy crap, he just drew his gun without warning. To a patient who had just woken up, this is just too much." "What? He scared me," Daisy said helplessly, explaining that she was only trying to defend herself. Dr. Eric said, "Fine, you're done." The two were speechless. Dr. Eric struggled to lift Thor's large frame into the car. Soon, the three drove away from the desert. The aurora and tornado disappeared immediately after Thor's arrival. After taking Sewer to the hospital, the three went straight to his bedside. Seeing Jane about to leave after completing the admission procedures, Zai asked with concern in her eyes, "Jane, are we just leaving him alone in the hospital? Where did Sewer come from? It's not good for him to be alone in the hospital, or he might cause problems for the hospital staff. After all, Sewer is tall and strong, and he was grazed by a car and acted like nothing happened. Is it really necessary to be so abnormal? He's practically inhuman. Why don't you stay and keep him company?" I need to analyze the data from yesterday's hospital as soon as possible. This research is more important to me. Jane remained calm, her face expressionless. More important? Can it be more important than the data I'm researching? Anyway, I've already got him to the hospital. He won't die. Jane, wait for me. I'm coming too. Zai thought for a moment, then jumped to catch up with Jane. She hesitated to say that Soul was very handsome, but just thinking about how he seemed mentally unstable last night, she decided against it. Clearly, Zai was unwilling. She'd rather find Chen Feng, the handsome young man, who is not only good-looking and funny, but most importantly, not mentally unstable. Drai Yunk intercepted the two in his car and returned to the crudely constructed research institute. Not long after, Soul, who had been knocked unconscious by electrocution, slowly opened his eyes on the hospital bed. He looked at the doctor with suspicion. Don't be agitated, I'm just here to draw your blood, the doctor explained kindly, holding Soul's foot firmly in his hand. Release him. He is Odin's son, how dare you attack him? Thor was furious and directly used the doctor's hand to grab him. I need to help. The doctor struggled to hold Thor down and shouted to the people. Although Thor had lost his divine power and was now just a mortal, his superhuman strength was on full display at this moment, and all the medical staff could not control him. Quickly call security, a female nurse screamed from the side. Thor was completely uncontrollable at this moment and was about to run out the door. Until then, a large number of security personnel arrived. However, facing Thor's tall and strong body, none of them could gain the upper hand in a short time. Surround him, it seemed to be the security captain, who used all his strength to suppress Thor, and at the same time took out a stun gun and shot Thor in the neck. Thor immediately lost consciousness again and did not know what had happened. The three people who returned to the research institute immediately began to analyze the storm last night. Doctor, look, this is not our planet's star map. Last night, Earth's star map looked like this. Jane placed two photographs in front of Dr. Wenrick, creating a stark contrast. Dr. Wenrick's eyes darkened. Upon seeing the images, he too was filled with doubt, for they were indeed not star charts of Earth. Look at this, Wes suddenly shouted to the two, as if he had discovered something extraordinary. His tone carried a hint of horror. Jane and Dr. Wenrick quickly came over. However, upon seeing what was in the photographs, their expressions changed drastically. We'll probably have to go to the hospital. Jane quickly put on her coat and headed for the door. West and Dr. Wenrick hurried after her. What was in the photographs filled them with dread. In the hospital, Sewer was bound to the hospital bed, unable to move. Damn mortals, how dare you treat Odin's son like this? You have offended the gods, Sewer roared, his eyes blazing, but in the isolated ward, no one could hear him, and no one paid him any attention. Sewer struggled with all his might. However, all of this was to no avail. Impossible. This is impossible. Thor struggled to accept this fact. I, the great son of Odin, Thor, having lost all my divine power, am just a slightly stronger, ordinary man. After struggling for a moment, Thor knew clearly that he couldn't break free by sheer force. He stared blankly at the ceiling above him. Thor's hands continued to fumble, and finally, after some effort, he managed to pull himself free from the ropes. Jane and the other two finally arrived at the hospital. They rushed into Thor's ward, but Thor was nowhere to be seen. We have to find him, Jane said firmly from inside the car. Did you see what he did? I'm not sure going to him is a good choice. Dr. Eric, remembering Thor in the photograph, unmarked, refuted Jane's suggestion. Danger. This is too dangerous. We don't even know Thor's identity, who he really is. What if he has a bad personality? The three of us will be in serious trouble. This guy knows everything, he'll tell us what we want to know, so we have to go find him. He was completely taken aback, a glimmer of hope flashing in his eyes. Okay. West has prepared all the equipment. Dr. Eric asked, somewhat incredulously, you mean we're going to take over the entire New West? Yes, not at all, he spoke frankly, then started the car. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the trunk. Thor had crashed into the car and was unconscious again. Cough cough, I think he must have just come from the hospital, right? Hearing the noise, West turned to look at Jane, a slight chuckle in his heart. What a stroke of luck. This guy's luck is truly incredible. Chapter 31 Lessons. Take him back, she said, enunciating each word clearly. With Jiner, she could unlock the secrets of the star chart. The group returned to the research institute, and Thor came over, looking at Jane, whom he knew fairly well, and asked, "Where am I?" After Jane's explanation, Thor went from understanding to utter bewilderment, finally realizing his situation and accepting the fact that he had become immortal. He had been sent to the mortal realm and stripped of his divine power. What could he do? He was helpless. Thor was in despair. Was he destined to be a mere mortal, just drifting along like this? Thinking about it, Thor felt a chill. At this point, Thor had no other options, he'd just have to fill his stomach first. "I'm a little hungry," Thor asked. "Do you have any food here?" Only Jane made him feel at ease. Because Dr. Eric's gaze wasn't friendly, and Zai was the guy who had given him the electric shock, Thor was annoyed. Damn it. Thor actually fell victim to this very skill. It's infuriating. Of course we have it. We'll arrange it for you right now. Let's go. Zai immediately thought of Chen Feng, took out his phone, and dialed. After a brief exchange, Zai smiled and led Thor away. Jane sighed helplessly, while Dr. Eric looked bewildered. You're starving. How can you eat so much? Zai, arriving at Chen Feng's side, stared blankly at Thor, who was still eating without stopping, his face full of astonishment. This appetite is incredible. Jane and Dr. Eric stared in disbelief, looking at Thor like he was an alien, their hearts undoubtedly pounding. Chen Feng glanced at him indifferently and continued preparing his food. Thor wasn't human, he was merely a god who had lost his power, so it was normal for him to eat so much. Thor finished the juice in his glass, then turned to Chen Feng and said, "Hey, young man, this drink isn't aluminum." "Another one." Thor happily waved his arm, about to throw the glass on the ground. Chen Feng grabbed Thor's hand and said calmly, "Buddy, you can't just smash a cup like that. It's an Asgardian tradition." Thor frowned, tightening his grip, still trying to break the cup. "This isn't Asgard." Chen Feng's eyes narrowed, his deep voice carrying a chilling aura. "Damn it. You're picking on Odin's son, the prince who's going back to Asgard." Thor stood up abruptly, his eyes narrowing as he glared at Chen Feng. "You're just immortal now," Chen Feng said coldly, placing his hand on Thor's shoulder. The immense force forced him back into his seat, completely powerless to resist. All right, we're all acquaintances, there's no need for this." Jane, seeing the situation escalating, immediately stepped in as a peacemaker. "For Jane's sake, I won't hold it against you this time. After all, you're just a mortal now." Chen Feng's tone was full of contempt for Thor. "What did you say?" "I am Thor, son of Liangding. I once defeated the frost giants," Thor roared. His eyes burned like flames. Seeing Chen Feng's nonchalant attitude, Thor was furious and retorted angrily. "You said it yourself, that was all in the past. You should know your place now," Chen Feng said indifferently. Thor was stunned. These words truly touched Thor's heart. He was speechless for a moment. He was stunned. Yes, even the most glorious past was just history. And now? He was a demon banished by his father, a demon god who had lost his divine power, and he didn't even know where his weapon, Mjolnir, was. How could he still call himself Thor? "That's too much," Zai whispered in Chen Feng's ear. "Chen Feng, don't discourage him too much. Thor is already a bit neurotic. If we keep pushing him too far, and he really goes insane, it'll be difficult to handle." In Zai and Dr. Ian's eyes, Thor's talk about the Rainbow Bridge, Skard, Thor's hammer, etc., was all fabricated. They didn't believe it at all. Too fake? This isn't a myth. What, Odin's son, Thor, right? Only Jane believed Thor's words and wanted to get the real answer from him. "Please, give us 2 hamburgers and 2 bottles of wine." Just then, 2 burly white men came to the car. After staying in New York State for a few days, Chen Feng's express car had become quite famous in the area, and his food was very popular, with a certain number of regular customers every day. At this moment, a white-haired man asked, "Have you heard? A satellite fell from the sky over there." "Of course I've heard about it, but it doesn't seem to be a satellite. Some people say it's a hammer, which is indeed very heavy. It seems like many people can't carry it away." The brown-haired man seemed to know more details. After hearing their conversation, Thor's disappointment vanished instantly. The next moment, a confident smile quickly appeared on his face. Standing up, Thor walked to the 2 burly men, patted the brown-haired man's shoulder, and asked sternly, "Tell me, where did that thing fall?" The brown-haired man, seeing the robust Thor behind him, hesitated for a moment before saying, It's 80 kilometers to the west. Upon receiving the news, Thor headed straight west, a confident smile on his face. Fireworks, after I get what's mine, I'll let you have a match with me. Halfway there, Thor seemed to remember something, turned to look at Chen Feng, and spoke in a defiant tone. No problem. However, I have to tell you one thing, remember your smile right now. Chen Feng grinned indifferently. Can you reply to me? Then you can talk nonsense. Thor nodded somewhat nervously, not understanding the meaning behind the words. That's true. Why so much? Once we get Thor's weapon back, why should we be afraid of a mere mortal? We'll have to teach him a lesson. Chen Feng, we're leaving first. Seeing Su'er leave, Jane packed her things and quickly chased after him. Eric also hurriedly followed, forgetting about Jane holding Su'er's hand. Zai, why aren't you leaving? Chen Feng asked, looking at Zai, who was still silently drinking her beverage in front of the car. I've had enough of Dr. Eric's offerings, and besides, your drinks are so delicious, Zai said shyly in a low voice. Compared to Thor's messy affair, Chen Feng is much better. Vixen, Mindy, sitting next to Chen Feng, stared intently at Zai with her small eyes and muttered softly. Chu Yang smiled helplessly. Two women make a drama, that's really true. Jane, are you willing to take me to that place? Thor stopped after walking for a while. Damn it, am I? Now that we no longer possess divine power, walking 80 kilometers with the body of a mortal is far too slow, and the physical exertion would be immense. Who knows how long it would take? Chapter 32 Questions. 1 day? 2 days? Jane smiled and asked, are you Ochenger? Then can you tell me about yourself? Jane desperately wanted to know all the secrets about Thor. Jane, come here, I have something to tell you. Eric, who had followed, patted Jane on the shoulder and pulled her to his side. Jane, let me tell you, the Rainbow Bridge, Sogdiana, and Thor's hammer that this person mentioned are all myths I read when I was a child. You can't easily believe him. After Dr. Eric's persuasion, Jane finally decided to listen to Dr. Eric. I'm sorry, I can't help you now, Jane said somewhat reluctantly. It's okay, I still want to thank you. Ryu Ochenger smiled, kissed the back of Jane's hand, and turned to leave. Seeing that Jane had listened to his advice, Eric took her back to the research institute. What are you doing? This is a private place, everything belongs to me. However, upon returning to the research institute, Jane found that a large number of servants had appeared in the house, taking away all her equipment, data, etc. Jane, calm down. These people are not people we can afford to offend. Dr. Eric immediately pulled Jane back, restraining her. But this is my home. They're violating my privacy, this is my private residence. I'm going to sue them, Jane protested, still angry. These research equipment and materials represented a long and arduous journey of her life. Hello, I'm Agent Callison from the government. I'm here because these things are related to national security and I need to take them all back. Callison approached, showing his identification. To minimize the impact of the Thor's hammer incident, S.H.I.E.L.D. has taken complete control of the situation in Joguo, and everything related to it is being confiscated. This is robbery, it's illegal, Jane continued to argue. However, Eric, standing beside her, kept her in check, knowing how terrifying these people were. In just a few minutes, S.H.I.E.L.D. took away all of Jane's belongings, leaving only an empty house. Jane, I have to tell you, we can't afford to offend these people. I had a friend who researched Ray Magma, and after they found him, he disappeared, Wenrick said from the side. At this moment, Zai had just returned from Chen Feng's place, his face beaming with joy, looking extremely happy. However, his happiness didn't last long. Seeing the empty house, Zai stammered, Jane, doctor, what happened? Was our house targeted by a team? Jane didn't answer. She stared blankly at the sky for a while, then drove away from the research institute. Jane wanted to be alone and quiet. Meanwhile, inside the pet shop, Saul earnestly told the owner, Boss, I want a horse I can ride. The eager look in his eyes told him he wasn't joking. Sir, the owner replied earnestly, we don't have horses, only teddy dogs, huskies, and golden retrievers. Saul retorted, what kind of pet shop doesn't have horses? Saul's actions inside the shop were witnessed by Jane outside, who suddenly had an idea. Since you've taken everything from me, I'm even more determined to investigate. It must be said, being resented by a woman is a terrible thing. Jane walked into the pet shop, looked at Saul haggling with the owner, and said bluntly, Saul, I'll drive you to that place. You're willing to take me? Saul was shocked. If he remembered correctly, Jane had just refused him not long ago. WTF? What happened? Jane had actually changed her mind. Yes, let's hurry up. That place is a full 80 kilometers away from here. Even driving there will take several hours. Jane urged him on, not directly answering Thor's question, and pulled him outside. Damn it. Even more eager than me, caught off guard, Thor was pulled away almost without warning, looking at Jane blankly. It wasn't until they got into the car that Thor came to his senses. Their eyes met, and for a moment they both froze, staring at each other in a deathly silence. After a while, Thor stammered, I said, Miss Jane, are you really willing to help me? Jane smoothed her hair, preparing to drive. Otherwise, why would I come here to find you? It's so obvious, why do you have to keep asking? Honestly, Jane really wanted to crack open his brain to see if it was rusted or waterlogged. As the car started, their conversation intensified. At this moment, they finally approached the place where Thor's hammer had fallen. However, the area had been taken over by S.H.I.E.L.D, with a thick net erected around it, heavily guarded to prevent outsiders from entering. Here, what are you doing? Jane, who was observing the situation inside with binoculars, heard the commotion beside her and looked at her, who stood up and put her clothes on. Nodded and laughed. You stay here, I'll go get what's mine. Her's figure gradually disappeared. Jane watched her disappear into the darkness, a worried look on her face, yet a tremor ran through her heart, as if because of her's actions. Sir, this place has been taken over by the local government. Private entry is not allowed. Please take your sister and go back together. The guard in black combat gear looked at the man and woman in front of him with unfriendly words. Before Chen Feng could speak, Mingdi angrily said, What sister? I'm his friend, you know? So what if I'm younger? Did I eat your rice? Does being younger automatically mean you're a sister? Why can't we be friends? Childhood friends are unacceptable. Mingdi really disliked those who always claimed to be Chen Feng's sister. They were a bunch of clueless people, wasting their eyes. Chen Feng coughed dryly. He was quite indifferent to Mingdi's behavior. Especially seeing the strange expression on Wei Guo's face, he felt extremely awkward. Chen Feng gave Wei a knowing look before continuing, Just call your leader out here. I want to talk to him personally. Unexpectedly, Wei completely ignored Chen Feng, even angrily saying, Our leader is not someone you can see. Go home now. This place refuses visitors, urging Chen Feng to leave. Wei's expression was already showing impatience. You want to see our boss? Do you think you're some big shot? Just a nobody. What's going on here? A man in a suit walked over. Chen Feng? What are you doing here? Upon seeing Chen Feng's appearance, Carlson was stunned. He couldn't help but be shocked. How did this guy get here? Carlson was completely bewildered, full of questions. I came to New Zealand for a visit and brought Mindy to see that thing that fell from the sky, but your people don't seem to want me in. Chapter 33 Questions. Chen Feng shrugged. After hearing Chen Feng's words, Carlson could only smile wryly. It was the rule here to keep outsiders out, so Wei hadn't done anything wrong. After all, he didn't know Chen Feng and was just doing his duty. But for Carlson, it was different. Chen Feng was someone even Director Fury wanted to win over. If this incident caused Chen Feng to completely refuse to join the Avengers, Carlson believed he would definitely be punished by the director. That would be a real pain. Therefore, Carlson smiled apologetically and then led Chen Feng in. Wei, standing to the side, seeing his leader's respectful demeanor, understood Chen Feng's identity and felt incredibly flustered. No way. Does it have to be this bad? He thought about how he had offended this important figure and been demoted along the way. Chen Feng finally saw the Thor statue propped up in the mud and felt a sudden urge to try and pull it up. However, just then, the surveillance footage showed someone had entered. Carlson's expression changed, and he hurriedly said, Quickly send someone to check the southwest. A short while later, several guards arrived at the southwest side of the iron fence, where there was already a hole. Someone has entered. Upon receiving the report, Carlson immediately activated the alarm, and all the agents and guards stood ready. Chen Feng calmly said, No need to rush, we'll just wait here for him. Carlson nodded in agreement. There wasn't anything important here, except for that messenger who fell from the sky. The person who entered was clearly after Thor's hammer. So, we just waited here for him to walk right into our trap. On the other side, a distant eye, holding a bow, quietly watched Thor's hammer. Outside, Thor, no longer caring about anything else, rushed directly towards the location of Thor's hammer. Thor believed, as long as I obtain Mjolnir, I will surely regain my divine power and become Thor again. With his agile movements, Thor quickly rushed inside, only a dozen meters away from Mjolnir. Despite expending considerable energy, Thor's eyes still betrayed a hint of a smile upon seeing Mjolnir. Son of Sting, Thor, the god of thunder, am finally returning. Thor easily gripped Mjolnir with one hand. Stop, Cole, who had been observing from the sidelines, stopped Barton from shooting the arrow. He also wanted to know if Thor could actually lift the hammer. Thor exerted a little force with his right hand. But Thor's hammer didn't budge. Thor's expression changed drastically, his brow furrowing. He gripped it with his left hand as well, but even with all his might, it was still no use. Thor's hammer remained firmly planted on the ground. Impossible. This is impossible. I don't believe it, Thor roared, straining with both hands again, using every ounce of strength he had. The blue shard in his hand lifted, but it was still useless. Father, Heimdall, let me go back, Thor cried out to the heavens. Only the echo reverberated in the air. Cole was somewhat disappointed and ordered the guards to restrain Thor, who had infiltrated the area. Thor was lost. He was taken away by S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and imprisoned. Cole looked at Sue, who had been taken away, and asked suspiciously, who exactly is this person? At first, I thought Sue might be the owner of this hammer, but now it seems that was just wishful thinking. Cole couldn't believe Sue's true identity. I'll go try. Chen Feng's eyes lit up. And he suddenly walked straight towards Thor's hammer below. He really wanted to try and see if he could really pull it up. Chen Feng, this won't do. That hammer seems to have radioactive energy, and we don't know what danger it poses. Cole quickly stopped Chen Feng, trying to stop him. I know what I'm doing, don't worry. Chen Feng waved his hand and said decisively. Are you kidding me? What danger could Thor's hammer pose? Besides, Chen Feng just wanted to try if he could lift it. In the movie, only Phantom Wood lifted Thor's hammer, others like Tony Rogers and Colonel Rhodes all failed. If he could lift Thor's hammer, that would be a great feat, thinking about it that way. Still a little excited, Chen Feng strode over to Thor's hammer, gripped the handle with one hand, and exerted all his strength. After several breaths, Thor's hammer remained motionless. It seemed that relying solely on his own strength, it was impossible to move Thor's hammer even an inch. Chen Feng exhaled deeply, preparing to use the power of a hero this time. The stone golem was summoned. Chen Feng's hands were gripped by tiny stones, and a surge of pure energy coursed through him, making him seem to have become more refined. Chen Feng gave a soft shout. The stone golem exerted all its strength, but still, there was no movement. Chen Feng couldn't help but curse inwardly. Even the stone golem couldn't shake Thor's hammer. This time, I'm going to get serious. Chen Feng thought to himself. The strongest hero he could currently use, Kassadin the Void Walker, was summoned. His right hand gripped the hammer handle. Suddenly, the surrounding space seemed to change, becoming slightly contorted. Carding's ability to grasp the void, even with the slightest release, could directly affect the void itself. Taking a deep breath, Chen Feng gripped the handle with his left hand, then exerted force with both hands. The next moment, the surrounding space violently trembled. Layers of energy seemed to rise up, and Chen Feng's figure vanished instantly. Inside the space, Chen Feng exerted all his strength, and Thor's hammer seemed to shift slightly. But then, the space beside him seemed unable to withstand the pressure, as if it were about to shatter. Chen Feng quickly withdrew his hand, withdrawing his power into his body. The spatial fluctuations stopped, and his figure reappeared. Hwhew, this Thor's hammer is indeed difficult to wield. Chen Feng sighed and walked towards Mindy's side. His strength was still too weak. If he were strong enough, wielding Thor's hammer would be a piece of cake. Although there was an element of luck involved, Captain Roger of the United States wanted to touch Thor's hammer for that reason. The main factor was strength. Just like Thor's sister, Hela, the goddess of death. With his overwhelming strength alone, he crushed Thor's hammer. Chen Feng, you just disappeared. You scared me to death. Mindy threw herself into Chen Feng's arms, her voice filled with worry. Chen Feng smiled, gently stroking Mindy's head, and softly reassured her, it's all right. Don't you know how strong brother Chen Feng is? At Chen Feng's suggestion, Cole released Thor. Now Thor was just a mortal, and having just been struck by Thor's hammer, his spirit was low, and he couldn't possibly say anything. "Thank you, Chen Feng." As he left, Thor's expression was indifferent, clearly still immersed in the disappointment of not having lifted Thor's hammer. "It's nothing. I just hope you remember our bet." Chen Feng smiled calmly. Then he took Mindy away. A bet? Thor hesitated. Only then did he remember his bet with Chen Feng. "Once I regain the power of Thor, I'll come back and settle things with you." Chapter 34 Difficulty. Thinking of this, you could only smile bitterly. If you couldn't even lift Thor's hammer, how could you possibly regain the power of Thor? "Thor, are you alright?" A familiar voice rang out, and Jane ran to you with a worried expression. "Jane, I'm fine, I just need to calm down." Seeing Jane, your expression softened slightly. However, anyone could see that you were in very bad shape. "Did someone inside hit you?" Jane asked anxiously. Donger took Jane's hand and said softly, "No, it's my own problem. Let's go back first." Looking into Soul's eyes, Jane stopped talking for some reason and drove Soul away. In the days that followed, with Jane's company, Soul's mood gradually improved, and he told Jane almost everything about himself. Summer. Not far from Soul, a multicolored light appeared in the sky. Dad cracked open. It was almost exactly the same scene as when Jane first met Soul. "Why are you here?" When he saw the people's appearance, a smile immediately appeared on Soul's face, and he happily went to greet them. "Of course, we've come to take you back," the man with a brown beard said gruffly. Just as the group was talking, another seven-colored light appeared in the sky on the other side, and a loud thud was heard, as if something big had fallen from the sky. "Who is that? Did someone else come down?" Sen-Er looked at Zaimei with confusion. "I don't know, it should only be a few of us who came down." Zaimei shook her head. It was indeed only the three of them who had come down this time. Just as the four were lost in thought, the figure finally appeared. The destroyer. Who brought it here? Could it be sent by the Father God to help us? The group stared at each other in shock, all looking bewildered. But soon, the four realized that this thing was definitely not there to help them. Terrifying energy rays shot from the destroyer's eyes. Powerful shockwaves swept away everything in their path, leaving nothing but barren land. The nearby houses were instantly split in two. Even the earth itself was carved with a deep, long gash. "Thor, you step back, I'll protect you," Zaimei said, gripping her spear tightly. Although Scarred's technology was advanced, they used the most primitive weapons. A burly man with a brown beard and another man stood shoulder to shoulder with Heim, blocking the advance of the destroyer. "I'll take you," the tall, imposing man with a brown beard, wielding an axe, charged forward, his feet slamming into the ground, leaping into the air. He swung his axe at the destroyer. Just as the burly man with the brown beard was about to strike the destroyer slashed his head, striking him hard in the mouth, sending him flying and crashing into a car in the distance. Immediately afterward, a dazzling light flashed in the destroyer's eyes, a bewitching, star-red gleam, and a terrifying energy wave began to gather, preparing to target the burly man with the brown beard. If hit by this energy wave, the burly man with the brown beard would be severely injured, if not killed. "Die!" A furious shout came from behind the destroyer. Heim suddenly leaped out from behind, a long spear piercing the destroyer's body. The next moment, the light in the destroyer's eyes vanished, and his entire body hunched over. Before Zai Ying and the others could even celebrate 163, the destroyer revived, its steel body twisting around, its bright eyes rising and aimed at Zai Mei. "Open fire!" Zai Mei froze. Fortunately, the two men beside her shouted a warning in time. Zai Ying dodged the destroyer's energy beam with a swift movement. Looking at the house that had been pierced through by the machine in the distance, Zai Mei still felt a lingering fear. "Let's attack together. One person alone can't defeat the destroyer. At least three of us need to work together and cooperate to have a chance," said Zimei. The three exchanged glances. With their long combat experience, they immediately split up and attacked from three different directions. They formed a square formation, quickly trapping the destroyer in the middle, and then launched a fierce attack. Zimei, wielding a spear, moved like a nimble leopard, swiftly charging towards the destroyer. The other two also quickly approached the destroyer, their axes and long swords gleaming. In the Jotun Sea, the three had often fought against ice giants many times their size, so they had experience dealing with giants and knew exactly how to defeat them. At this moment, the destroyer, caught off guard by the three's combined attack, didn't know which one to attack, giving the three the opportunity and time to close in. Die, Zimmer-E rushed directly to the destroyer's feet, her spear aimed straight for the destroyer's eye. The burly man with the brown beard swung his head, aiming for the destroyer's neck. Another man attacked the destroyer's back. Clang. 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 The combined attack of the three men produced a metallic clang, and the light in the destroyer's eyes dimmed, as if its energy had been severed. In a flash, the destroyer's eyes blazed brightly, and the three men were simultaneously sent flying by the violent shockwave, each landing with a muffled thud on the ground. The destroyer was Asgard's heavy weapon, specifically designed to deal with high-end combatants. Its strength was terrifying, even comparable to the Hulk, its power inspiring fear in countless people. Especially its final energy ray, almost comparable to the power of lightning released by Thor. At this moment, the destroyer's eyes flashed with light. Annihilation. A terrifying, unparalleled energy ray shot out, rapidly sweeping towards the three men lying on the ground. One of them was a Asgard warrior, quite strong, and dodged the energy ray. Too strong. Not an Asgard destroyer. They were stunned. The three men frowned, their expressions grave. The destroyer's strength far surpassed theirs. Let alone protecting her, even protecting himself would be difficult. At this moment, the destroyer no longer cared about the three, his only goal on Earth was to kill her. Stop him. Don't let him get close to her, Sif said anxiously, disregarding her own safety. She rushed out first. Sif, don't rush, the burly man with the brown beard tried to stop him, but it was too late, and he could only grit his teeth and rush out. The three attacked again. However, under the destroyer's overwhelming strength, they could only be defeated one after another. The destroyer punched one of them, sending the two men flying, unable to get up for a long time. Sif was also hit by the destroyer's energy ray and was severely injured. After dealing with the three, the destroyer approached her step by step, the light in his eyes shining brightly again. Thor hesitated at this moment, took a few steps back and then stopped, not daring to step forward. He knew. Not only did he know, but he also understood. With his current mortal strength, it was impossible to defeat the destroyer. Similarly, trying to run away was also unrealistic. Asgard. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 The Destroyer. As the destroyer drew closer, Thor seemed to have made up his mind and charged forward one last time. The result was predictable. The destroyer showed no mercy just because Thor had become mortal. It struck Thor squarely in the face. Thor was sent flying backward like a cannonball, crashing violently to the ground, his face a bloody mess, seemingly lifeless. Jane, who had been silently watching from behind, rushed forward at top speed, embracing Thor's body, her eyes red and tears streaming down her face. At that moment, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents finally arrived. Upon seeing the colossal destroyer before them, they were all utterly shocked. Quickly, get all your weapons and attack it. Don't let it hit anyone else, Coulson ordered the agents beside him. The power was terrifying. If it wasn't stopped, this entire area would be reduced to ashes. Chen Feng, what are you doing over there? While giving orders, Coulson suddenly saw Chen Feng pass by and said gravely, that big guy is too dangerous, come back, but Chen Feng didn't stop, continuing to walk towards the destroyer. Uncle, you don't need to worry, just keep an eye on it. Mindy appeared beside Coulson, eating a lollipop, looking like a spectator. Seeing the calm Mindy and the fearless Chen Feng, Coulson began to believe Mindy's words. Wasn't it because Chen Feng was so powerful that the director had invited him to join the Avengers? Perfect. Today, let's see Chen Feng's strength. Is he really as powerful as we imagine? Chen Feng approached Thor and calmly said to the destroyer, first, big guy, this guy is the one I'm looking for. You can leave now. Clearly, the destroyer wouldn't listen to Chen Feng. His eyes blazed with fury, and he unleashed an energy beam. He really doesn't listen to good advice. Chen Feng shook his head, and a gust of wind gathered before him, forming a wind barrier that blocked the energy beam. This shocking scene stunned Zai Mei and the others. Coulson and his fellow S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were also stunned. They stood there dumbfounded, their eyes wide with disbelief. Just now, the destroyer's energy beam had turned everything to ash. Its power could only be described as terrifying. At this moment, everyone was deeply moved, only one thought lingering: how could this be? Everyone's expression was deeply moved. They were stunned. Chen Feng's strength was truly unimaginable. The energy beam was blocked, and the destroyer seemed shocked, glancing at Chen Feng. Chen Feng stepped forward. He wouldn't give the destroyer any chance to be careless. With a swift movement, Chen Feng charged towards the destroyer, a crescent-shaped white light flashing, followed by a cold glint, and slashed at the destroyer. Sword energy soared into the sky. A deep sword wound appeared on the destroyer's chest, clean and conspicuous, piercing directly into its body, destroying everything inside. However, the destroyer was ultimately made of metal, and even with a huge wound, it seemed unaffected. The air exploded. The destroyer instead threw a punch at Chen Feng, its fist moving with lightning speed, tearing through the air with a whistling sound, accompanied by a terrifying aura. Clang. Sparks flew. A clear sound rang out. Chen Feng swung his sword, easily blocking the destroyer's punch 29 and judging from his expression. Throughout, Chen Feng remained remarkably calm and composed, as if he hadn't exerted much effort at all. The destroyer was a machine. It wasn't affected by emotions. Another fist swiftly swung out, aiming for Chen Feng's abdomen. However, the destroyer's head seemed to be blocked by an invisible barrier just before making contact with Chen Feng's body, completely unable to penetrate. Looking at the destroyer with a smug smile, Ji Shen's face revealed a hint of amusement. My turn. Chen Feng's heart stirred, and a sword aura that swept across the 4 seas and 8 wastelands suddenly erupted from the Gale Sword, slicing the destroyer's head in two. As Chen Feng moved within the Gale Sword, he instantly appeared behind the destroyer and brought his sword down, striking its back. The terrifying power of the steel flash sword abruptly cleaved a huge star-shaped opening in the destroyer's back. At the same time, the energy within the destroyer's body seemed to surge due to the damage to its form, constantly boiling within. This sword strike was incredibly powerful. The destroyer, half dead and without power, lay on the ground. Even though it was made of machinery, the destruction of most of its body rendered it unable to move. At this moment, the destroyer's body was filled with increasingly surging blue energy, its entire body appearing incredibly red. The next instant, energy rays shot out from the destroyer's eyes, and unsurprisingly, they were all blocked by Chen Feng's sword. However, the well wasn't over yet. The energy within the destroyer seemed uncontrollable, erupting like a volcano. Not good. Chen Feng also noticed something was wrong. This behemoth seemed about to explode. If this guy exploded, the entire area would likely be affected. And with Mindy nearby, Chen Feng couldn't let the destroyer explode like that. Chen Feng quickly switched heroes, his body covered in countless small stones, completely enveloping him. It was none other than the shrinking giant, Fate. After switching, Chen Feng immediately selected magic resistance equipment from the shop: adaptive helmet, invigorating armor, gargoyle stoniplate armor, abyssal mask, iron solari, and mercury. Equipped with these resistance items, Chen Feng walked directly to the destroyer, his 2 massive hands reaching out to touch it. Even though the destroyer's energy was already surging, it was nothing compared to the stone golem. Chen Feng was decked out in resistance gear. With a forceful push, the destroyer's body was compressed, gradually condensing into a small sphere. As the space shrank, energy surged wildly within the destroyer, emitting endless flashes of red light, growing increasingly violent, as if it were about to explode. Suddenly, a large vial appeared in Chen Feng's hand, faintly emitting a poisonous aura. He opened the stopper, stuffed the violently raging spherical destroyer inside, and quickly sealed it tightly. After a while, the large vial vibrated violently, as if the energy inside was colliding wildly. However, all of this was in vain. Under the powerful force of the large vial, even the energy from the celestial palace within the destroyer was melted. Chen Feng looked at the now steady large vial and retrieved it into his system. At this moment, apart from Jane sobbing softly, the entire Zhou kingdom was deathly silent. My god. That's incredible. Is he a mutant? I've never seen such a powerful mutant. He's amazing. The soldiers and agents beside him, holding assault rifles and bullets, were all stunned, staring blankly at Chen Feng. Chapter 36 War. This is insane. This isn't even human. The sheer power is terrifying. Everyone gasped. To many, Chen Feng's power was like a monster, a god from the heavens. He was incredibly strong. Didn't I tell you? There's no need to worry about Chen Feng. But you'd better worry about your men, they seem completely terrified. Mindy felt that if he needed more, he would still have a large portion of the stick left, and walked towards Chen Feng. Really? I should have just bought a bag of potato chips. As Chen Feng dealt with the destroyer, Zai and the other two, who had recovered some of their strength, quickly came to his side. The corners of their eyes were filled with apprehension as they looked at Chen Feng. This person's strength is too terrifying. In the entire S.H.I.E.L.D., there are only a few people who can defeat him. Just then, became the focus of everyone's attention. Just as everyone was looking at her, a bright light covered his body, and the blinding light made everyone cover their eyes. The next moment, the light slowly disappeared. Wearing armor and draped in crimson, Thor appeared before everyone completely unharmed. The aura on his body was completely different from before, holy and noble. With divine power, Thor made the people of Joe Kingdom want to worship. Hammer, come, stretched out his right hand. In the distance, a clanging sound rang out, and Thor's hammer ripped through the air, returning to his hand with lightning speed. I, Thor, son of Od, have finally returned. Thor roared confidently at the sky, venting the pent-up frustration of the past few days. Sif looked at Thor and said happily, Thor, your power is back. We can go back now. Wait, Thor, you seem to have forgotten something. Chen Feng stepped forward, stopping Thor from leaving. Chen Feng, I'm very grateful for your help in dealing with the destroyer, but I need to return to S.H.I.E.L.D. now. They desperately need my help, Thor said with a smile, about to walk past Chen Feng. A man can't go back on his word, especially when he makes a boastful promise. Chen Feng had no intention of letting Thor leave so easily. Betraying the gods? Especially the son of Od? Would that be interesting? Thor frowned, scratching his head, unsure of Chen Feng's meaning. Oh, the bet, right? I remember now. I'll do it later. I need to go back to my father now. Thor didn't seem to care about the matter and insisted on leaving Clang. A swift sword suddenly blocked Thor's path, its meaning clear. I'm going to fight you, get out of the way. Before Thor could speak, Zai Ying, holding her spear, aimed at Chen Feng and said without any politeness. Chen Feng had just displayed formidable fighting power, but if he wanted to harm Thor, Zai Ying would still stand up without fear. Chen Feng shrugged. Same here, Thor. I think you should take better care of your woman, otherwise, she might die. With that, the next moment. Summer. The heavens and earth cracked. A terrifying aura rose. Chen Feng's entire body emitted a terrifying sword aura capable of destroying the world, producing a horrifying phenomenon. The heavens and earth cracked, as if it would pierce through this world. The sword aura swept across. In an instant, he rushed to Zai Ying's side. He was immediately gripped by endless panic, his arm gripping the spear trembling uncontrollably, on the verge of collapsing to the ground, surrendering to the sword energy. Especially since Chen Feng's sword energy was specifically targeted at Sif. The others only felt a small portion of it. But even this small portion was enough to shake them to their core. It was terrifying, truly terrifying. The feeling was like a Damocles sword was held against their heart. Any slight movement would instantly shatter their heart and kill them on the spot. Chen Feng, don't do this, I don't want to harm you. With a sudden movement, a thunderous sound erupted, dispelling the sword energy around Zai Ying. Having regained his divine power, he was now the king who controlled lightning, the god of thunder. Zai finally came to her senses, letting out a sigh of relief, though her forehead was covered in sweat. Her entire back was soaked with sweat. At that moment, Zai felt as if she had experienced the most terrifying thing in her life. In her mind, the terrifying image of that country lingered faintly. Fear gripped her body and mind, preventing her from even glancing at Chen Feng. A ghostly man, filled with dread. You know, if you don't fulfill this agreement, you won't be able to return to Asgard. Chen Feng stepped forward, his words brimming with rage. Human brat, then let me first test your strength, for Asgard. The brown-bearded burly man suddenly charged forward, swinging his axe at Chen Feng. Overestimating yourself. You can't even beat a guy like that, yet you want to fight me, Chen Feng coldly exclaimed, and with a single strike, sent the brown-bearded burly man flying. He was practically floating. Not even a wisp of wind could blow him away. The immense force prevented him from standing, leaving him sprawled on the ground, grimacing. Chen Feng, don't be so ruthless. I didn't want to harm you, but you harmed my friend. Thor's expression changed drastically. He looked very angry, raised Thor's hammer, aimed at Chen Feng, and said in a low voice, "I, Thor, accept your challenge. Everyone, get out of the way." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone around Chen Feng and Thor moved aside, keeping a distance of nearly several hundred meters. "Chen Feng, I really didn't want this to happen. I'm grateful to you, but you forced me to. What are you dawdling for?" Chen Feng didn't waste any words. With a single sword strike, he seemed to pierce through the space, instantly arriving beside Thor. If it were an ordinary person, they might have been defeated by Chen Feng's sudden sword strike. But who was Thor? He was Thor, son of Odin, who had fought against the god of war of S.H.I.E.L.D and was very experienced. Thor reacted immediately, and Thor's hammer swiftly struck the Gale's wound, blocking its attack. "You reacted pretty quickly." Chen Feng, with his terrifying speed, suddenly appeared behind Thor. A cold light flashed. The expected sword didn't appear. Instead, a clear metallic clang rang out. Thor used his Thunder God's blade to block Chen Feng's attack. At this moment, Chen Feng had to admit that Thor, as the god of thunder, was indeed a level above Yasuo. However, Chen Feng wouldn't give up. He wanted to test Yasuo's limits. Inside the shop, Chen Feng selected attack and attack speed items and equipped them all on Yasuo: Infinity Edge, Static Shiv, Phantom Dancer, attack speed items, Storm Razor, and Bloodthirster. With these items, Chen Feng felt his strength rise to another level, his body brimming with immense power. Thor seemed to sense the change in Chen Feng's aura as well, his gaze sharpening. Chen Feng took a step forward, his speed even faster than before. Chapter 37: The Sword of Gale. The attack speed of the Gale sword also increased to another level. In a few flashes, Thor's previously unharmed body was now covered in several sword wounds. The attack speed of the Gale sword was almost supersonic, and Thor's eyes could hardly keep up, each attack a beat too slow. Although Chen Feng attacked Thor, he did not cause much damage. This was mainly due to Thor's divine body. Its defense was too astonishing. And without armor-piercing equipment, the damage that Thor could cause was extremely limited. Chen Feng thought to himself that he should expand the 6 boxes of limited edition equipment in the future. If he could equip unlimited items, that would be really awesome. Chen Feng's attack speed was very fast, and Thor could not keep up. Thor gave up his attack, gripped Thor's hammer tightly, and stared intently at Chen Feng. Clang! The Gale sword and Thor's hammer collided. The two collided magnetically, emitting a terrifying shock. Crack! The wind and sky were split. Moreover, the power of Thor's hammer was even stronger than that of the Gale sword, suppressing Chen Feng for a moment. Knowing he was at a disadvantage in strength, Chen Feng quickly withdrew his Gale sword to avoid a direct confrontation with S.H.I.E.L.D. Simultaneously, a gust of wind rose beside him, increasing his speed and putting him further away from S.H.I.E.L.D. Thor, who had intended to press his advantage, glanced at the now more distant Chen Feng and simultaneously increased his speed, suddenly flying towards him. As the god of thunder, Thor seemed to be surrounded by lightning as he charged, and his Thunder God sword crackled with electricity. A bolt of lightning, as powerful as 1,000 hooks, shot out. Like a fiery serpent, it rushed towards Chen Feng's body with lightning speed. The lightning was even faster than S.H.I.E.L.D.'s. In an instant, it caught up to Chen Feng. Chen Feng didn't underestimate it, releasing a wind wall to block the terrifying lightning. "It can actually block my lightning." Thor was utterly shocked by this sight. He knew that lightning unleashed through the Thunder God sword could sweep away a large area of ice giants. But who is Chen Feng? Just a mere earthling, Wang Zhao? How could he compare to a god? The thought only fueled his disbelief. "Thunder, come!" Thor, refusing to believe it, unleashed another bolt of lightning from Mjolnir, aiming to strike the wind wall. This time, it was again blocked by the wind wall, failing to harm Chen Feng. However, the two consecutive lightning attacks completely exhausted the wind wall's energy, causing it to dissipate around Chen Feng. "How can I test Ye's limits if I'm just passively fighting like this?" A thought flashed through Chen Feng's mind. He slowed down slightly and finally stopped. Seeing Chen Feng stop, Thor steadied himself with a suspicious look and muttered curiously, "What trick is Chen Feng up to now?" At that moment, endless gales seemed to gather in the sky, stirring up a cloud of dust that enveloped the entire sky. Looking around, a huge tornado could be seen forming, howling as if it were sweeping across the entire town. "Thor, you've lost this time," Chen Feng shouted, and the tornado suddenly rushed towards Thor. What amazing power! Facing the raging tornado, Thor's expression hardened, and he gripped the Thunder God's staff tightly. If it were anyone else, They would probably be scared away in this situation. But who is Thor? The thunder god of the early stages. The god of war of Asgard, who is least afraid of danger. Otherwise, he wouldn't have started a war in Jotunheim. This led to Odin, the Allfather, taking away Thor's power and banishing him to Earth. Whoosh! A fierce wind arose. The attack of the dragon-shaped tornado came, the howling wind blowing Thor's hair wildly, but his eyes remained unwavering, arcs of electricity already leaping on Thor's hammer. Sizzle! The lightning crackled. In the next instant, a terrifying Section 4 suddenly erupted from the raging tornado, a force capable of destroying everything. Everything around Thor was swept into the tornado. Only Thor stood firm, his gaze fixed resolutely on the tornado before him. Then, Thor moved. He swung Thor's hammer forward with tremendous force. A terrifying bolt of lightning, piercing through clouds and splitting rocks, struck the dragon-shaped tornado. An unparalleled connection. There, a glimmer of light flashed within the terrifying tornado, lightning swirling wildly within it, coiling around the entire outer edge of the tornado. The scene before them was like a battle between gods, a celestial phenomenon, utterly terrifying to the world. Too horrible. A peerless god. Suddenly, a violent explosion resounded within the tornado, all the objects sucked into it were destroyed and exploded by the lightning, bright flames shooting into the sky. Although the lightning was inside and outside the tornado, it could not stop its advance, and soon it reached Thor. To call Thor a reckless man would not be an exaggeration, he directly charged into the tornado. Thunderbolt. 1,000 hooks of lightning. With a soaring momentum, the lightning above the tornado shone with boundless light, like a king's robe, shooting out in all directions. In an instant, the entire tornado was engulfed by lightning. From the outside, its impact was immense, transforming it into a thunderous dragon. Seeing this terrifying celestial phenomenon, even those watching from afar were terrified. Their hearts trembled, and their large eyes remained unsettled for a long time. To them, this was the power of a god, a power that humble mortals could not match. Chief, it seems you've gained another person you've wanted. J.D.N. Kelson stared intently at the scene before him, silently reciting in his mind. After being completely covered by lightning, the tornado slowly subsided. Soon, the terrifying section and gale also gradually disappeared. When the tornado finally stopped, the lightning that had covered it also dissipated into the previously overcast sky. At this moment, the bright sunlight finally shone on the entire Earth again. A figure flashed past at lightning speed. So fast that it was impossible to see the figure clearly. A terrifying sword aura swept across the entire blood-red sky. At the same time, countless cold lights flashed in the air, terrifying and unparalleled, releasing sword aura that crisscrossed the sky, causing the entire space to tremble. Thor reacted quickly, immediately turning around. The endless lightning crackling on Mjolnir blocked the attack. But before Thor could calm down, the sword pierced through his lightning defenses, striking his shoulder. Countless cracks appeared on Thor's armor, rapidly spreading outwards. This was Chen Feng's strongest sword strike, condensing all his power and creativity. After shattering Thor's armor, the sword tip penetrated Thor's skin, and bright red blood flowed out, staining Thor's armor. Because of this, the lightning surrounding Thor vanished, and Mjolnir dimmed, as if turning into a seed of darkness. However, in the next instant, a torrent of terrifying power, like a raging flood, erupted from Thor's body, a terrifying shockwave sweeping everything away, sending Chen Feng flying. Chapter 38 Rainbow. Along with the remaining gust of wind on Thor's shoulder, it was sent flying. A terrifyingly powerful force swept out. In an instant, a gale arose, dark clouds gathered, thunder rumbled, and the heavens and earth seemed about to split apart. This is a god. This is the power of the god of thunder. This is Thor's true power. Indeed, it's still a little lacking. Chen Feng retreated a full 100 meters before regaining his footing. For Yasuo to force Thor to this point was already quite remarkable. If you think you've already succeeded, you're too naive. Chen Feng's eyes narrowed, revealing a confident expression. The gust of wind surrounding Chen Feng vanished, and a powerful force erupted from his body. The Voidwalker, caught in. Chen Feng used his technique, and his entire being seemed to undergo a sublimation. At this moment, Chen Feng was no longer a mortal, but a true god capable of emulating Thor. I am the god of the void. Although Karding wasn't the strongest member of the Kikun family, his strength was still among the top 3. If it were the Kikun fear of Kog'Maw, it would be terrifying, capable of swallowing the entire earth. Rumble. Thor, unleashing his full power, was surrounded by endless lightning, seemingly transforming into a giant sea of lightning. With a flick of his hand, the space around Thor fluctuated, the entire lightning field seemingly trapped in the void. What was happening? Thor was completely bewildered. Staring blankly at the lightning that had stopped expanding, Thor's expression froze, not understanding what had suddenly occurred. As the god of thunder, Thor's mastery of magic was poor, and he couldn't possibly know about the anomalies in the void. Chen Feng's palm suppressed, the divine power overwhelming. All the lightning was swallowed into the void, disappearing into the heavens and earth. As the lightning vanished, Thor finally calmed down, staring incredulously at the scene before him, dumbfounded. Kinner asked urgently, "Chen Feng, what did you do?" He knew it was all Chen Feng's doing, but his strength was too great. "I didn't do anything, I just wanted you to calm down." Chen Feng smiled calmly, arcs of electricity already flashing in his hands. He was using the Void Walker while simultaneously wielding Kennen's lightning power, a skill Chen Feng had only recently discovered. That day, Chen Feng had a sudden inspiration. He wanted to try and see if he could unleash the abilities of another hero while using Yasuo. Unexpectedly, his first attempt was a resounding success. While using Yasuo, he unleashed the power of the Malphite. So now, Chen Feng was surrounded by endless lightning, constantly crackling and emitting a hissing sound to defeat Thor. Of course, he would use his full power to defeat him. Chen Feng, carrying overwhelming lightning, appeared before Thor in a flash, startling him. This was the power of the void, capable of traversing freely through space. Endless lightning bombarded Thor relentlessly, engulfing everything in its light. Thor was stunned for a moment, then immediately reacted, unleashing boundless lightning from his own body. The two attacks were earth-shattering. They complemented each other brilliantly. A burst of intense light erupted, illuminating the sky like daylight. Sif and the others were stunned. The S.H.I.E.L.D agents and soldiers were shocked. Everyone's hearts were in turmoil, all closing their eyes because of the blinding light. Only the intertwining of thunder could be heard in the world. Under the intertwining of thunder, the world fell into silence. After a while, it slowly returned to calm. The intense light disappeared, and everyone opened their eyes, quickly looking up at the sky. At the center where Chen Feng and Thor were located, the void was still enveloped by a terrifying mass of thunder, making it impossible to see their figures clearly. Deathly silence. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the final result, each with anticipation in their eyes. After a moment, the previously calm thunder suddenly surged, rapidly expanding outwards, and a low, explosive sound came from within. Thump. A figure flew out from within, extremely fast, and before anyone could see its face, it crashed heavily to the ground, creating a huge crater. Under the question. Sand and stones flew, dust filled the air. A long, slender, and terrifying ravine stretched out, as if being ripped apart by a scalding force, shooting outwards. The entire earth, unable to withstand the immense power, shattered and spread outwards. Look at the sky. It's Chen Feng. He actually beat Thor, the god of thunder from mythology. Am I dreaming? My god. I can't believe my eyes. A mortal has defeated a god. When they saw Chen Feng standing with his hands behind his back in the sky, the guards below, as well as I and the others, stared wide-eyed at him, looking incredibly excited. He actually beat Thor. Carlson couldn't help but gasp, stunned and somewhat unable to recover. Although he didn't quite know Thor's identity, judging from the strength he had just displayed, he was definitely not an ordinary person, perhaps even an alien. Yet now, he had been beaten so badly by Chen Feng, and it seemed he was still the one being suppressed. Shock. Deep shock. So handsome. Chen Feng is definitely the most suitable man for romance. He can cook, looks rich, and even his strength is so great. Daisy hugged her hands tightly, clasped her hands together, and looked up at Chen Feng in the sky with a flower-like smile. This man. I must get him, Daisy silently vowed in her heart, making this her life goal. Below, Mindy also looked at Chen Feng with awe, her whole heart completely occupied by him. Chen Feng's gaze fell on Thor, who lay in the deep pit, and the lightning in his hand dissipated. Thor is indeed worthy of being the god of thunder, the son of Omega. Chen Feng had used almost all of his lightning power to defeat him. The dinosaur descended from the sky. Chen Feng came to Thor's side and calmly looked at him, who had been charred by lightning. Sif and the other two rushed to Thor's side as quickly as possible, their eyes filled with fear as they looked at Chen Feng. Only after they felt that Chen Feng would not make any more moves did they come to Thor's side and help him up. Cough cough. Chen Feng, I have to admit, your strength is indeed very strong. Thor coughed twice, looking disheveled, his injuries healing at a visible speed. As a god with divine power, Thor's recovery ability was extremely terrifying. Asgard won't let you go. Zai Ying looked at Chen Feng fiercely and said through gritted teeth. Thor was beaten like this, and she couldn't help him at all, feeling extremely resentful of her own powerlessness. This is a duel between men. I promised Chen Feng. I can only blame myself for not being strong enough, Thor explained to Zai Ying. Not wanting to damage her relationship with Chen Feng. He also didn't want to provoke a war between Chen Feng and Asgard. Because Thor had a premonition that even Asgard might not be able to defeat Chen Feng. Just then, the sky suddenly became colorful, and a rainbow-like light appeared in the town. Chapter 39 Opportunity. A white-haired old man riding an 8-legged white divine horse, Srigener, and wielding the eternal spear Gungnir, appeared in the rainbow light. Father, Thor exclaimed in surprise upon seeing the white-haired old man. Amazing, Thor couldn't believe it. His father, who had always been in the realm of gods, had actually come to Earth in person. You have offended the people of Asgard and violated the laws of Asgard. Now step forward, and I may give you leniency. Ding's high and mighty voice, like a resounding bell, instantly echoed throughout the entire town. The voice also contained a portion of Ding's divine power, and the common people, upon hearing it, felt a desire for worship and couldn't help but fall to the ground. It's me. Chen Feng stepped forward, fearlessly standing up. Even facing Ding, his expression remained perfectly calm, showing no sign of weakness. Very good, I admire your courage. Now come with me to Asgard to face the judge of Asgard, Ding said bluntly. He gestured to the people beside him, including Zai Mei, to take Chen Feng away. No, Chen Feng, you can't go with them. Mindy rushed over and grabbed Chen Feng, preventing him from leaving. Kalso also stepped forward and said seriously to Ruiding, Sir, I'm afraid I have to tell you, you have no right to take this person away. S.H.I.E.L.D is a special department designed to handle all sorts of strange events. And the aliens just happen to be in this country. Humble human, you have no right to decide this matter. Otherwise, you are going against Asgard, and you cannot bear this responsibility. Odin openly and blatantly shouted at this ordinary human, Korzhen. This is Earth, not Asgard. Of course I have the right to do this, Korzhen continued to argue his point. He wanted to buy time for Nick Fury to make a plan. Sting swung the eternal spear in his hand, and a terrifying power swept out. But when it reached Korzhen, it was stopped by an invisible wind barrier. Liang Ding shouted angrily, feeling very angry about Chen Feng's behavior. Asgard? What does it have to do with me? God looked at Liang Ding coldly, his eyes full of disdain. You? Liang Ding was so angry that he couldn't speak. This was the first time he had been so contemptuous. At this time, Suer had recovered almost completely, and her face had become rosy. She spoke up to persuade him, Father, it's okay. It was just a bet between me and Chen Feng. There's no need to make a big fuss. S.H.I.E.L.D has completely offended the dignity of Asgard. I must take him back to Asgard for judgment, Ding said firmly, his tone unwavering, leaving no room for anyone to change his mind. Inside S.H.I.E.L.D, all agents were on high alert. He'll have the helicarrier target Odin. So what if he's the king of the gods? If he makes a rash move, let him know the power of Earth's high-tech weapons, Nick Fury said gravely to Hill, his eyes glued to the screen. This situation was more dangerous than ever before. Tony, you probably know what happened in New Mexico. Chen Feng must not fall into Odin's hands and be taken to Asgard. Nick Fury dialed Tony's number, his tone extremely serious. Unfortunately, I was just thinking of having Chen Feng taken away. Tony hung up the phone, muttering to himself as he put on his Iron Man suit. Deep down, Tony somewhat wanted Chen Feng taken to Asgard. After all, he still owed Chen Feng 2 suits of armor and a bunch of new weapons. Every time he thought about it, Tony felt a pang of pain. You tricked me out of so much stuff? Aren't you angry? Of course I'm angry. Even though Tony considered himself a genius scientist, developing a suit of armor still required a lot of time and effort, especially considering the need to design it specifically for Chen Feng and Mindy's physiques. Tony had a curse in his mind, but he didn't know whether to say it or not. Damn it, if you had been taken away before I got here. Tony suddenly thought of this and felt a surge of anticipation. Thinking about it, It was really awesome. A burst of scorching flames erupted from the ground, and Tony, piloting his Iron Man suit, sped towards the new District of Mexico. Similarly, the Sky Mother was already prepared, ready to unleash a full-scale attack on the eight-legged divine horse Sleipnir if he made any rash moves, to let this Asgardian understand that Earth was not to be trifled with. So, you don't need to defend him. This concerns the dignity and honor of Asgard, and no one is allowed to violate it. Ding raised his gaze high, the eternal spear in his hand aimed at Chen Feng, its surface gleaming with intense light. It seems so much time has passed that Earthlings have forgotten who taught them the creed. When Odin was still a child, the Frost Giants attempted to invade other worlds, waging a decisive battle against Asgard on Earth. The Frost Giants used the ancient coffin of winter to plunge Earth into an ice age, while Odin led the warriors of Asgard in a final battle against the Frost Giants. In the war, Odin was unstoppable, even killing the largest Frost Giant, but in the process, due to carelessness, the Frost Giant King S.H.I.E.L.D was fatally wounded in his right eye. Asgard paid a heavy price, ultimately winning the decisive battle, and the Frost Giant's energy source, the ancient coffin of winter, was taken away. Therefore, when Odin saw Chen Feng and the other humans rebelling against him, he was furious. He had once been their leader, but now he was treated as an invader. Hey, bring the warriors of Asgard to Earth. The dignity of Asgard must be re-established, Odin shouted, looking up at the sky. The next moment, a rainbow of light, spanning half the void, appeared, and hundreds of soldiers clad in golden armor landed neatly beside Odin. Humans, I'll give you one last chance. Hand over Chen Feng, and I'll forgive your ignorant offense, Odin said in a deep voice, appearing righteous and awe-inspiring. I'm sorry, sir, I'm afraid I cannot agree to this. Coulson firmly shook his head, while the soldiers and guards behind him, fully armed, pointed at the armored soldiers. If this were on Earth, and they stood by and watched Chen Feng being bullied by aliens like this, S.H.I.E.L.D would have no reason to continue existing. Humans, you don't know how much trouble you will bring to Earth? Odin's eyes narrowed, his expression icy, his tone filled with arrogance. With a wave of his hand, all the golden armored soldiers pointed their spears at Chen Feng and the others. Coulson, take your men and retreat. This is not something you can handle. Chen Feng stood in front of Coulson, gesturing for them to retreat. Asgard's technology is far ahead of Earth's. Don't be fooled by the spears those soldiers carry. They can actually fire energy beams that are faster and more powerful than bullets. Take good care of Mindy, and make sure she doesn't get hurt. Chen Feng handed Mindy over to Coulson. A battle was imminent, even more dangerous than his fight with Soul. Mindy became Chen Feng's only concern. It seemed that only Coulson could be trusted to protect Mindy. Coulson said earnestly, Chen Feng, you're alone. Don't be too overconfident. We can help you too. Although Chen Feng had just displayed overwhelming strength, the enemy now numbered in the hundreds, especially Odin riding his divine horse, whose strength was unfathomable. Chen Feng alone. Chapter 40 Light. Coulson was filled with worry. His thought, if you don't want your people to turn to ashes, hurry up and get out of here. Just then, Tony flew to Chen Feng's side and said to Coulson, Tony? I didn't expect you to be here too. Shouldn't you be at home building the armor right now? Chen Feng turned his head, looked at Tony who had landed beside him, and asked calmly. Damn it. This kid, why does he have to bring that up? Tony's face twitched with anger. He cursed inwardly. I came all this way from far away, and you give me this damn thing. Damn it, do I look like the kind of person who goes back on their word? Tony retorted, and a red armored suit flew up behind him. This is the Mark Micro armor specially designed for Mindy. Let her try it on. As soon as the words were spoken, Mindy jumped up excitedly, shouting, Great! Great! The armor wings parted and came to Mindy's side, enveloping her completely. Chen Feng, I can fly. I can help you. That's wonderful. Inside the armor, Mindy looked at the screen in front of her and shouted happily. Jarvis, take Mindy to a safe place. Tony contacted Jarvis, but Mindy's Iron Man armor flew backward uncontrollably. Tony Stark wouldn't let Mindy participate in the battle, and he knew Chen Feng certainly wouldn't allow it either. Just like that, the Mark Micro armor on Mindy's body was set to be controlled by Jarvis from the beginning, its main purpose being to protect Mindy. Tony, let me back. Mindy's sharp, piercing voice came from beside him, and Tony quickly shut down the communication. Let's deal with the problem at hand first. Looking at Chen Feng's somewhat complicated eyes, Tony stared at Ding's stern face in the distance. This person is the biggest threat right now. As for other things, we'll talk about them later. Tony said to Ding, alien, your name is Ding, right? Earth is closed now, we don't accept any alien races. You can leave with your men, HMPH, you overestimating yourselves as humans. Remember, you all exist because of me. Ding was extremely arrogant, his words already portraying him as the godfather of humanity. The golden armored soldiers beside him had sharp eyes, their spears gleaming, ready to attack at Ding's command. And don't think I don't know you just because you're up there. One move and you're doomed. Ding looked at the distant sky, a cold, domineering laugh on his face. His eyes were like candlelight, spanning the entire sky, seemingly right before everyone inside the helicarrier's surveillance system. How did he discover the helicarrier's location? Nick Fury stared at the screen, his eyes narrowing, his face filled with shock. Get the helicarrier out of there. Nick Fury immediately issued a new order. The helicarrier was incredibly expensive, a significant investment by S.H.I.E.L.D. if it were destroyed by Odin. Damn, the pain would be unbearable. This enormous loss would be beyond what S.H.I.E.L.D. could bear alone. Even as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, despite witnessing countless supernatural and superhuman events, still felt a chill run down his spine in the face of Odin, the king of the gods. This was a legendary god. And not just any god. The shock, striking deep into his soul, was almost unbearable for Fury, an ordinary man. At this moment, because of Odin's power and terrifying strength, Fury thought again of Dr. Banner, whom he hadn't yet found, and Chen Feng, who hadn't yet agreed to his request. The Avengers had to be assembled as quickly as possible. If even a mythical being like Odin had come to Earth, who knew what terrifying beings would appear next? In short, all plans had to be accelerated. Fury had a premonition that an even more terrifying battle would soon erupt on Earth. Warriors of Asgard, prepare yourselves. Let these Earthlings understand that Asgard is inviolable. Ding raised his voice, his booming tone resonating like a great bell. For Asgard. Asgard is inviolable. Asgard is inviolable, all 29 soldiers shouted in unison, their voices powerful and resonant, seemingly echoing throughout the heavens and earth. Father, haven't you always advocated for peace? Why are you now initiating this war? Stop it. Seeing Jane's terrified face, felt deeply guilty. If it weren't for him, this war wouldn't have happened, and Jane wouldn't have been implicated. I do desire peace, but they refuse to hand over Chen Feng and have even offended the authority of Asgard. This cannot be forgiven, Ding said solemnly. This war is unstoppable. We must teach the Earthlings a profound lesson, making them understand their place in the universe. Energy converges. The soldiers' spears were all aimed at Chen Feng and Tony, and the light on them grew stronger, emanating an invisible and terrifying aura. Odin, seated atop his divine horse Sornal, raised the spear of eternity and roared, "Warriors of Asgard, attack!" In the next instant, countless energy rays roared forth, overwhelming Chen Feng and Tony. A light flashed in the center of Tony's palm. Two even larger energy rays shot out, clashing fiercely. A deafening roar erupted at the point of contact, followed by a burst of intense light. A terrifying shockwave, centered on that point, swept across the entire world. The impact was immense. Tony's energy ray was clearly stronger. In a moment, it completely overwhelmed its opponent, charging towards the golden armored soldiers with unstoppable force. A series of explosions erupted, unstoppable, raising endless waves of dust and sand. However, Chen Feng was even more formidable. With a flash, he charged directly into the swarm of energy rays, allowing them to attack him relentlessly. Without exception, all of the energy rays that reached Chen Feng were blocked by a wall of wind, unable to touch him. In the blink of an eye, Chen Feng rushed into the Asgardian soldiers, his gale slash sweeping across. The next moment, a sword aura that swept across the 8 directions burst forth. The sword intent soared to the sky. All the soldiers around him were knocked to the ground by this sword aura, their armor suddenly split in two and slipped off their bodies. Moreover, this sword aura not only shattered their armor, but also left deep wounds on their chests, with bright red blood gushing out. One sword, just one sword. Under the terrifying sword aura, nearly half of the Asgardian soldiers were lost. Summoning Kassadin and then using Yasuo's ability really raised the level. Chen Feng looked at the soldiers lying on the ground beside him, lifeless, and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Yasuo in the League of Legends universe is just a great swordsman, but Kassadin is a product of being devoured by the void. The strength of the two. The difference in height is immediately apparent. Chapter 41 Sword Key. This kid's too strong, Tony exclaimed in astonishment as he saw the group of soldiers beside Chen Feng. Damn, he'd just defeated 3 Asgardian warriors with considerable effort. The Asgardian warriors, in terms of weaponry and combat skills, held a clear advantage in every aspect. Another major reason was that Tony had only recently become Iron Man, and his strength was certainly not yet at its peak. Moreover, his armor was only upgraded to the Mark VI, and its power was still too weak. Currently, Tony's ability to defeat 3 Asgardian warriors was already quite impressive. Hold on. Do you aliens like to launch attacks too? Just as Tony was stunned by Chen Feng's actions, an Asgardian warrior suddenly rushed behind Tony, his spear disappearing into his Iron Man suit. Tony grabbed it with his backhand. At the same time, he activated his thrusters. He was sent flying into the sky, then staggered backward, crashing into a distant mountain. The Asgardian warriors behind Tony finally landed on his armor. Having shaken off the assailant, Tony was about to fly back to continue fighting when he found all the soldiers had fallen. Looking again, he saw Chen Feng, his face calm, standing straight amidst the fallen, wielding the Gale Blade, which seemed to emanate a fierce sword aura, like a war god, commanding the entire arena. Tony looked at the Asgardian warrior below him, utterly bewildered, speechless, stunned. What? Is he really that awesome? Does your family know you're like this? So powerful. Am I here to help, or just to loaf around? A thought flashed through Tony's mind. Human, I must say, you are very strong. Odin looked at Chen Feng with a grave expression, speaking each word clearly. My power doesn't need your approval. Chen Feng's eyes gleamed, holding the Gale Blade, its tip pointing towards Odin. Ha ha ha, this is the first time I've heard something so interesting in so long. Ding laughed, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. On the Spear of Eternity, endless divine power converged, and a new ring of stars appeared. Ding was enraged. He was utterly furious, unleashing his full power. Chen Feng killed all the soldiers with 2 sword strikes, making Ding lose face. This was a blatant disgrace to himself and Asgard. Odin would not allow a human to stand above Asgard and himself, acting recklessly. Father, this battle should stop. You don't want to increase the casualties, do you? Einar pleaded from the side, not wanting to see the 2 sides continue to harm each other. Sif and the others could only stand beside Thor, unsure which side to support. Logically, as citizens of Asgard, they should unhesitatingly support Odin, but now, Thor stood against him. In this situation, they were in a difficult position and could only remain neutral. Moreover, the strength Chen Feng displayed deeply moved them, stirring their hearts and minds. It was beyond their comprehension. He was simply a monster even more terrifying than the frost giants. Chen Feng looked at Odin, and Odin stared intently at Chen Feng. At this moment, the two faced each other, neither attacking immediately. Odin was the god king of Sogdiana, possessing immense divine power, but now, due to his advanced age, he could only use a fraction of his former strength. Furthermore, Odin would periodically enter a state of slumber to adjust his divine power. At this moment, the aged Odin was not far from his slumber. And his divine power was not particularly stable, even somewhat chaotic. Most importantly, Odin's sister Hela was still alive, and Odin had to conserve most of his divine power to deal with her. Odin also knew that his years were numbered, and he had to eliminate any potential threats to the kingdom of Sol before Sol truly grew up. The goddess of death? Hela was one of them. Whoosh! A gentle breeze blew by, like the silent battle cry sounding on a silent stage. Chen Feng took a step forward, instantly disappearing from his original spot, and reappeared behind Odin in the next instant. A fierce wind seemed to swirl above him, and a sharp, piercing sword aura shot out, carrying a powerful gust of wind, aiming directly at Odin. But just as the sword aura was about to touch Odin's clothes, Odin's body suddenly solidified, the sword aura piercing through him, striking the ground, splitting the earth, creating a huge chasm hundreds of meters long. A chasm. Everyone was shocked. Human boy, your strength is not bad, but before a god, it is still too weak. A voice rang out, and Odin suddenly appeared behind Chen Feng, the eternal spear in his hand emitting a bright light. A terrifying energy ray shot out swiftly, rushing towards Chen Feng's barrier with the force of lightning. A fierce wind arose in front of Chen Feng, instantly forming a wind wall, completely blocking the energy ray. But after blocking the attack, The energy of the wind wall was also completely neutralized, disappearing in front of Chen Feng. As expected of God King Ding, his speed and energy are far superior to Ding's. As soon as he finished speaking, Chen Feng took a step forward, his entire body rising into the air like a blur, entering the void and disappearing from Ding's sight. This was the ability of the Void Walker, Cassidon. He could traverse the void at will, and even stay in the void for a period of time. Spatial magic? Quite interesting. A glint flashed in Sting's remaining left eye, seemingly unfazed. After a moment, a gust of wind appeared above Odin's head, and Chen Feng swiftly emerged from it, slashing at Sting's head with a sword intent. A fierce and powerful sword aura swept out, rippling through the air, with a swift wind sword following closely behind at extreme speed. Good technique. Sting's eyes narrowed, his reaction swift. He tilted his head, dodging the sharp sword aura, but a lock of his white hair was sliced off, slowly falling to the ground. At the same time, Chen Feng's swift wind slash was also blocked by Odin's eternal spear, only centimeters away from his eyes. Sting's eight-legged divine horse, Rainier, suddenly launched an attack, stomping its hooves towards Chen Feng's head. This was no ordinary horse, but a divine horse from Asgard. The power of this attack was comparable to a small mountain pressing down. However, Chen Feng did not disobey, letting Sleipnir pound his hooves. A muffled thud was heard. Sleipnir's hooves were blocked by an invisible barrier, never truly touching Chen Feng's body. Odin was slightly taken aback upon seeing this, but a smile appeared on Chen Feng's lips. He swiftly withdrew the gale wound. In mid-air, a chilling glint flashed. The sword light was as smooth as water, and Sleipnir's pair of horses were suddenly broken, bright red blood flowing out, staining the ground below. Then, another rift appeared behind Chen Feng, quickly entering him and opening before Odin could react. Sleipnir let out a shrill scream. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Excitement. Time echoed throughout the town, as Odin writhed in excruciating pain. Sleipnir, I will avenge you. Ding dismounted from Sleipnir's back, stroking its head in a gesture of reassurance. Sleipnir had been Odin's constant companion throughout his life, more than just a mount or a divine horse, it was his friend, his family. Chen Feng, you will pay for what you have done, Ding roared angrily, his eyes suddenly shifting, looking even more like a vengeful old man. Take care of yourself first. Chen Feng suddenly emerged from the void behind Ding, his weapon transforming into a giant axe, which he swung fiercely at Odin's back. However, Ding's figure blurred. He dodged Chen Feng's attack with even greater speed, divine power surging within him, emitting smoke. Small stones and grains of sand around Chen Feng were all controlled by divine power, growing enormous, coalescing into a boundless sphere, hurtling towards Chen Feng. Chen Feng coldly snorted. A finger casually tore through the air, creating a rift in front of him. The next moment, everyone, from S.H.I.E.L.D to Thor and his group, saw this. Terrifying. Too strong. A vast, ocean-like void power emanated from it, instantly engulfing the entire stone sphere and sending it into an endless void. Your control over spatial magic is beyond my imagination, but it ends here. Odin's expression was indifferent, his face revealing a hidden meaning. Chen Feng felt a chill run down his spine. A bad premonition immediately surged into his heart. The divine power within the stone sphere suddenly exploded at this moment, its terrifying power directly breaking through the spatial barrier, exploding around Chen Feng. The void trembled. A terrifying shockwave instantly swept in all directions, raising countless flying sand and stones, the entire town as if swallowed by a sandstorm, dark and without sunlight. Even Tony, clad in his Iron Man suit, had to find a large rock, otherwise, no matter how sturdy the suit, it couldn't withstand the dense, high-speed barrage of rocks. It took a while for the shockwave to dissipate. The entire world finally returned to calm, but remained shrouded in dark dust. Chen Feng, how are you? Tony's Iron Man suit was covered in dust. He looked up at the sky, trying to locate Chen Feng but found nothing. Nick Fury dialed Tony's communicator, anxiously asking, Tony, have you found Chen Feng? The moment the surveillance cameras were destroyed by the sandstorm, Fury felt incredibly anxious. Because the last image on the screen was of Odin's power exploding around Chen Feng. Not yet, but I think he should be alright, Tony said somewhat uncertainly. Such a terrifying explosion, especially in the center, meant no one could escape unscathed. But because this person was Chen Feng, Tony had only a sliver of hope in his heart. His strength was always unpredictable, constantly showing signs of growing stronger. Fury said firmly, I also believe in Chen Feng. He won't die so easily. Actually, whether it was the earth-shattering duel with Hulk or the devastating defeat of Thor with a thunderbolt, these had all left an indelible impression on Fury. Chen Feng. He seemed to be someone who created miracles, someone who could make the impossible possible. Even if Chen Feng could defeat Odin, the king of the gods, Fury would have a sliver of doubt. Tony, don't attack for now. First, confirm Chen Feng's survival. For now, just be wary of Odin, Fury ordered Tony. At the same time, he sent orders to the helicarrier to search for Chen Feng and keep an eye on Odin. I understand, Tony agreed with Fury's opinion and silently searched for Chen Feng. A gentle breeze swept by. Then, the dust shrouding the town gradually dissipated, finally revealing its true form. Liang Ding stood beside the divine horse sleigh. Gently stroking its fur, Odin's divine power slowly flowed into Sleipnir's body, and its injured claws began to heal at a visible speed. Odin's divine power was indeed incredibly profound, possessing a powerful effect akin to reviving the dead and restoring flesh to bones. Father, you killed Chen Feng, Sewer, unable to sense Chen Feng's presence in the entire sky, asked Odin in surprise. I merely upheld the dignity of Asgard, letting these earthlings know that Asgard is not to be trifled with, Odin stated calmly, his tone indifferent, as if Chen Feng were merely an ant, killed and done with. Father, Sewer clenched his fists and lowered his head. Although Chen Feng's actions in order to duel him were indeed somewhat excessive, he had to admit that he had agreed to the duel first, and Chen Feng had chosen to act this way. Seeing the Zhou kingdom in ruins, the town no longer recognizable, and Jane's destruction of everything, all of this was caused by him. Sewer, prepare to return to Asgard, your exile is over. After repairing Srakunal's replica, Ding stood up and looked at Thor beside him. His gaze softened considerably, clearly indicating that he still valued his son. Sting, it seems you're really getting old. You can't even tell if I'm dead or not. Just then, a chilling voice rang out from the sky, and Chen Feng's figure appeared. What? You're not dead? Ding stared wide-eyed at Chen Feng, who seemed alive and well, his eyes wide with disbelief. He'd seen it. He'd understood. Impossible. It's simply impossible. His divine power had clearly exploded beside him. How could he not be dead? And why was he so clean and unharmed? A barrage of questions flooded Ding's mind. He couldn't fathom why such a strange thing had happened. Not only Odin, but everyone was stunned, their eyes wide with disbelief. This was utterly inconceivable. They couldn't believe Chen Feng was still alive. Some even thought the figure in the sky was merely a ghost, a projection. Tony excitedly exclaimed in his heart, I knew you wouldn't die, you're amazing. But a moment later, Tony sensed something was wrong. Damn it, he shouldn't be so excited. It would be better if Chen Feng were dead, then the Iron Man's suit wouldn't need further development. Tony felt another wave of anxiety. Director, we've found Chen Feng. He's not only alive, but he seems completely unharmed, a message came from Mothership. Just from the tone, one could imagine the man's eyes widened in disbelief, his jaw agape in utter shock. Stunned. He was speechless for a long time. Should we attack? No need, we'll just watch from the sidelines. Fury immediately rejected the idea, inwardly overjoyed. Chen Feng was not only alive, but also unharmed, fully demonstrating Fury's keen eye for talent. Moreover, judging by how things were developing, Fury was eager to see how far Chen Feng could go against Ding. After calming down, Ding's eyes flashed, and a powerful force, like the deep sea, erupted from his body once more. The eternal spear in his hand shone brightly once more. Chapter 43 Invalid. I miscalculated this time, but next time, you definitely won't be so lucky. Sting didn't care how Chen Feng had overcome his divine power explosion. Ultimately, he only needed to defeat him once more. And Sting believed he absolutely had the strength. Since I could defeat you once, I can defeat you a second time. Chen Feng merely smiled at Odin, his expression seemingly quite unconvinced. Sting's divine power explosion, though sudden and swift, contained far less power than Chen Feng had imagined. Just as the divine power was about to be unleashed upon Chen Feng, he directly entered the void. He used a move called Heaven Crossing the Sea. Even though the divine power entered the void, It caused absolutely no damage when it struck Chen Feng. A large part of the reason was probably that Odin didn't want to use most of his divine power against Chen Feng, concealing his strength and wanting to deal with the powerful Hela. However, it was precisely because of Odin's decision that Chen Feng emerged from the void unscathed, as if nothing had happened. Father, the majesty of Asgard has already been demonstrated. I believe these Earthlings understand this, so you don't need to deal with Chen Feng anymore. We can go back to Asgard. Odin hurriedly tried to dissuade him. One battle had almost destroyed this town, another, and New Mexico might be destroyed as well. Jane and her friends were still here. It would be these suffering humans who would suffer the consequences. Thor, you don't need to worry about this. I will decide. Odin spoke stubbornly, suddenly shouting towards the sky. Heldum, bring Thor and Heim back to Asgard, and then send a fully equipped squad down. Odin's words made Thor's face change drastically. This was the prelude to war with Earth. Heldum, this time you must not listen to your father. This will provoke a war. I know you desire peace, Thor shouted back, equally determined to stop the battle. Ding said threateningly, Heldum, send the soldiers down. This is the king's order. Do you know the consequences of disobeying? By the Rainbow Bridge, Heldum was conflicted, lost in thought. Torn between Ding's order and Thor's advice, Heldum was caught in a dilemma, unsure what to do. Heldum, send the soldiers down, or you will be dismissed from your post and banished from Asgard, Ding coldly declared. Hearing this, Heldum's heart trembled. Being banished from Asgard was worse than death. A rainbow appeared in the sky. The next moment, a well-organized troop of Asgardian soldiers appeared before Odin. Coulson and the S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel, seeing this army of nearly 2,000, looked grave. Tony flew to Chen Feng's side, his gaze heavy. But he only saw a face as calm as a lake. Hey! Aren't you nervous at all, at this moment? Looking at the Asgardian soldiers who had already descended upon Earth, Er's eyes dimmed, and a helpless, bitter smile appeared on his face. He had said so much, yet in the end, he still couldn't stop his father's actions. As Thor, as the Prince of Asgard, he had failed miserably. Chen Feng, I advise you to come back to Asgard with me for judgment. You've seen the situation, otherwise, Earth will suffer unbearable damage. Ding looked at Chen Feng coldly, his attitude as if victory was already assured. This time, it wasn't just a few hundred people. It was a small squad of nearly 2,000, and their equipment was even better than the soldiers before them, elite warriors. Definitely not weak. With these shrimp soldiers you brought, God laughed, completely disregarding Odin's threat. He was a man who never accepted threats from anyone. So what if he was Odin, the king of the gods? Did he really think I was afraid of him? He means to destroy Earth, right? Tony's face darkened. He looked at Chen Feng beside him, the electric pulse in his palm aimed at the Asgardian soldiers. Order the helicarrier to focus all firepower on the Asgardian soldiers. Fury, watching the scene on the screen, immediately gave the order. Damn, Fury was furious. Even the legendary mythical figure, Odin, the king of the gods, couldn't be so arrogant on Earth, actually using human lives to threaten them. It can be said that many people were very unhappy about this. All the weapons on the helicarrier were unleashed, all aimed at the Asgardian soldiers who had descended on New Mexico. As soon as they moved their weapons, armor-piercing shells, heavy missiles, light weapons, and various new weapons would launch a devastating attack without hesitation. Did these mere mortals really think they could defeat our Asgardian soldiers with Earth's weapons? How foolish and naive! Sting looked up, staring at the helicarrier in the distant clouds, and said with a hint of disdain, "Attack, warriors of Asgard!" Ding waved his hand downwards, and at that moment, the spears in the hands of all the soldiers flashed with bright light, and rays of light from the heavens and earth surged out like waves of water. It was like a cataclysmic disaster. And yet, it was also possible. Fury issued the order, attack. At the same time, the sky helicarrier also launched a fierce attack, and a dense barrage of missiles roared in, drawing a perfect arc in the air. Bang! All the missiles fell, all of them exploding on the energy shield formed by the Asgardian soldiers. The terrifying power did not cause it the slightest damage. These conventional Earth technologies, when compared with the technology of Asgard, were clearly inferior. It was like a primary school student trying to attack an adult, but because of his small size, he could never reach him. It was too much. Seeing the serious expression on Agent Hill's face, he said, "Director, all our weapons have failed." Hill's expression was somewhat unpleasant. He never expected that there was such a huge gap between Earth and Asgard, like a chasm. Continue the attack. Fury, equally grave, still ordered the helicarrier to attack. He couldn't believe it. He didn't want to believe it. That the Asgardian soldiers could hold out under such a frenzied attack. But the final facts told Nick Fury that his grandpa was still his grandpa. Asgardian weapons and technology were many times more advanced than Earth's. After all, the Asgardians had existed for a long time. Moreover, with a lifespan of nearly 5,000 years, they had naturally developed Asgardian technology to a level that Earth could not yet catch up with. After the helicarrier's attack was over, not a single Asgardian soldier was missing, and not even the energy shields were broken. Damn it, they're all show and no substance. Did those guys from S.H.I.E.L.D use weapons produced by Hammer Industries again? This is too weak. Tony looked at the soldiers with their shiny bald heads and couldn't help but question and complain. Chapter 44 Airwave. He'd been hoping to see S.H.I.E.L.D put on a spectacular show, but it was a huge disappointment. Utterly disappointing. Our weapons need an upgrade, Agent Hill whispered, offering his opinion. Nick Fury nodded. This unexpected battle had made it clear to Fury that the modernization and replacement of outdated equipment had to be accelerated. Otherwise, damn it, when the aliens actually invaded, S.H.I.E.L.D wouldn't even have the weapons to deal with them, becoming lambs to the slaughter, completely defenseless. What a joke. Hey, Chen Feng, why are you rushing out so fast? Leave some for me this time. I'm here to help, not to stand on the sidelines like those S.H.I.E.L.D guys, Tony shouted from behind, chasing after Chen Feng, who suddenly rushed out. This time, Tony didn't want to be a mere bystander again. He'd rather stay home and watch the live stream from his bed. Damn it. Let me just pretend to be something I'm not. You think you can take on a whole Asgard squad by yourself? Too arrogant. Ding looked at Chen Feng rushing towards him, his face full of disdain. This was an acknowledgement of the Asgard soldiers' strength. It was also a recognition of Chen Feng's strength. The next moment, just as Chen Feng was about to reach the Asgard soldiers, countless energy rays shot out twice, striking with a fierce and devastating force. The power was even more terrifying than before. Even the Hulk would have to admit defeat if he wasn't careful. Suddenly, small stones appeared on Chen Feng's body, completely covering him, and a fierce and wild aura was released. Crackling sounds filled the air. Muscles swelled, and bones proliferated. At this moment, Chen Feng's body unconsciously doubled in size, as if he had transformed into a steel giant. Inside Pain City, Chen Feng equipped himself with all the equipment that could increase his speed and damage. Luden's Resurrection, the Destroyer's Hat, the Spell Sword, the Spell Sword Shoes, the Push Rod, and the Banshee's Veil. Simultaneously, a magical shield appeared around Chen Feng. All the energy beams struck the shield, and without exception, they were all blocked. With a devastating thud, Chen Feng charged towards the Asgardian soldiers. Suddenly, several missiles blasted out from in front of Chen Feng, striking the soldiers' shields and causing a massive impact. The once impenetrable energy shield had been breached just like that. Nearly 3,000 Asgardian soldiers were stunned. But Chen Feng wouldn't let this opportunity pass. He charged straight into the Asgardian ranks, like a mountain, blocking the eyes of all the soldiers. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed through the heavens and earth. An immense surge of energy erupted from the soldiers, spreading like volcanic smoke, engulfing the entire world. A violent, turbulent wind arose. Zhou Tian's men involuntarily shielded their eyes. Chen Feng's kingly aura and immense power struck the depths of everyone's hearts. They felt as if a mountain was pressing down on their hearts, their faces filled with horror, their breathing extremely difficult. At the same time, Odin, the king of the gods, changed his expression drastically, even slightly affected by the aftershocks of this power. Clearly, he had underestimated Chen Feng's strength. A hint of apprehension finally appeared in his eyes as he looked at the Asgardian soldiers. He was no longer certain which side would emerge victorious. A moment later, Chen Feng and the Asgardian soldiers appeared before everyone's eyes. At this moment, everyone present was stunned. Their eyes widened, their jaws agape, as if they had witnessed an unbelievable scene, completely dumbfounded. Nearly 2,000 soldiers, their armor shattered, lay lifeless on the ground. Dead. All dead. For a moment, the thick stench of blood filled the entire town. Some people couldn't stand the stench and vomited violently. It was terrifying. No one could have imagined that these nearly 2,000 elite Asgardian soldiers would all die at Chen Feng's hands in just a short time. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even the usually calm and indifferent Sting couldn't help but twitch his lips a few times at the sight. His heart was bleeding. Damn it. Absolutely damn it. 2,000 elite soldiers, an entire squadron, dead just like that? This was too fast. You have to know that the population of Asgard is not large, estimated at only a little over 100,000, and those who can become elite soldiers are even fewer. The claim that the Asgardian population is small is not just baseless, it has a basis. After Hela, the goddess of death, escaped from imprisonment and returned to Asgard, she almost single-handedly killed all the Asgardian soldiers who resisted her. While Hela's immense power played a part, the main reason was the scarcity of Asgardian soldiers. And finally, when Thor led the Asgardian people away, he took them all away in a single flying vehicle, which directly shows that Asgard's population was small. Just like that. The deaths of these 2,000 soldiers are why Odin's face is so grim. He's furious. Chen Feng, I'll make you taste the bitterness, Odin said fiercely, his eyes blazing with fury. Heimdall, send 2 more squads. I'll show them what despair is, Odin shouted at the sky, his spear of eternity already pointed at Chen Feng. Heimdall, do you want to see the warriors of Asgard die in vain? Listen to me, don't open the Rainbow Bridge. Heimdall desperately tried to stop his father. Beetle, Odin's actions were even more insane than Thor had imagined. The Asgardian warriors couldn't be sent to their deaths because of his anger. Sending more men down to deal with Chen Feng would only increase the losses pointlessly, but Odin's thoughts differed from Odin's. He redeployed the scarred soldiers not to deal with Chen Feng, but to deal with the S.H.I.E.L.D agents. Although Odin was furious, he wasn't irrational. He understood that sending the scarred soldiers to deal with Chen Feng would only result in their deaths. Therefore, Odin would personally handle Chen Feng. Before Odin could speak, Chen Feng flashed to his side, his fist suddenly about to strike. The sudden attack caught Odin off guard. Fortunately, Odin reacted in time, raising his hand to block. A shockwave exploded. Chen Feng's fist struck Odin's hand with a muffled thud. A powerful, tingling sensation came from Odin's hand. Odin frowned slightly. He had to admit, Chen Feng's strength was astonishing. A mere human. Yet, he could unleash power almost equal to a god. The next moment, another punch was thrown. Even faster and more powerful than K. The space in front of Ding seemed to be shattered by this punch, faintly twisting and deforming. Bang! The eternal spear blocked Chen Feng's head, a sharp light flashing on the tip of the spear, vast and holy, its majestic aura radiating outwards. Chapter 45 Giant Axe. The attack struck Chen Feng's mouth, which was covered in stones, with lightning speed. However, this divine power only shattered a layer of stones in Chen Feng's mouth, causing no real damage. At this moment, Chen Feng mustered all his strength, his whole body radiating an imposing aura. His body trembled, and the power in his fist surged. Xia! His fist erupted with power. The immense force directly forced Liang Ding back several steps before he could regain his footing. Cough. That terrifying energy still lingered in Odin's body. Even with his divine body, he felt uncomfortable, as if his internal organs had been moved. Truly formidable, Chen Feng sighed, looking at Odin who had been blasted away by his own power. When using the Void Walker, Kassadin, and then combining the power of other heroes, the power was instantly increased several levels. If he had directly used Azure or the Stone Golem, Chen Feng certainly wouldn't have been able to cause much damage to Odin, the king of the gods. After all, Azure was just a guest. Even at his peak, he was at most a great swordsman. The Stone Golem was the same, originally just composed of lava. At max level, he was at most a strongman compared to a god. But Kassadin was completely different. Having survived being devoured by void creatures, at his peak, he could withstand even more powerful attacks. More importantly, Odin's strength was now less than 1/10, and he no longer possessed the terrifying power of his prime. Furthermore, his fear and reluctance to use most of his divine power against Chen Feng led to his current predicament. Don't be so smug, Chen Feng. Liang Ding hurled the eternal spear at Chen Feng, aiming directly at him. Gangneo, defeat him, his words fell. A divine light shone brightly. The eternal spear, like a streak of light, suddenly sliced through the sky and arrived before Chen Feng in an instant. However, Chen Feng didn't seem alarmed. With a wave of his hand, A crack appeared before him, and before the eternal spear could react, it plunged directly into the void. But the next moment, Chen Feng suddenly sensed a dangerous aura in the air and quickly dodged to the side. The eternal spear brushed past Chen Feng's ear, immediately turning around and attacking again. The eternal spear, Ganyo. Its ability is simple yet incredibly powerful. It is a 100% accurate divine spear, capable of piercing anything it touches, and then automatically returning to its master's hand. However, the claim that it could penetrate anything is clearly unfounded. Any opponent significantly stronger than Odin could easily withstand the attack of the eternal spear. The fact that Chen Feng could escape from the void was because his strength was roughly equal to the weakened version of Sting, not to the point of overwhelming him. The void he could tear was only the most minimal, which allowed the eternal spear to break through. Sting also rushed forward at this moment, unleashing terrifying divine power. A sacred and vast aura surrounded him, sweeping across the heavens, compelling people to bow in reverence. You will return to your master, right? Then I will send you back now. Chen Feng's mind raced, and he immediately had an idea. A crack appeared before him, and he immediately entered the void, the eternal spear following closely behind. The next moment, Chen Feng appeared behind Odin. Before the eternal spear and Sting could react, he immediately used the power of time manipulation. Time was locked for both Sting and the Spear of Eternity, flowing at a very slow pace, while Chen Feng remained within normal time. In a flash, Chen Feng appeared behind Sting. However, Odin unleashed an even stronger divine power. The power of time was instantly dispelled. Simultaneously, the Spear of Eternity, Ganyo, shot out from the void, about to pierce Odin's back. Not good. Sting's eyes narrowed, not daring to be careless, and he immediately withdrew Ganyo to prevent being hit. Even with Sting's divine body, being hit by Ganyo would be severely damaging. He wouldn't risk his life. Just as Odin withdrew the Spear of Eternity, before he could even relax, a magnificent and dazzling sword aura, like a crescent moon, slashed down from behind him. The void ripped open. At this moment, Odin had no extra reaction time. He could only quickly mobilize his divine power to his back to block the terrifying sword aura. A flash of cold light passed by. As expected, Odin's armor on his back was severed, and the fragments slowly slid off his body, revealing his back. Divine power surged forth, quickly protecting Odin's body. However, in that instant, it was impossible to gather much divine power. The sword energy cleaved through the divine power, landing solidly on Odin's back. Thud, a wound appeared abruptly. Accompanied by the flow of crimson blood, the energy emanating from the divine blood was released, and for a moment, the air seemed to be filled with the smell of blood. Odin's expression hardened, appearing extremely grim. He gritted his teeth, forcibly enduring the pain, and turned around abruptly. Die, a cold light flashed in Odin's eyes, and the eternal spear thrust out. Good, Chen Feng didn't choose to dodge. Instead, he leaped high into the air, his weapon transforming into a giant axe. Like a grim reaper harvesting 29 lives, he brought his axe down forcefully on Odin's neck. In that instant, a gigantic blade seemed to appear above Odin's head, a deadly scythe. An aura of death spread. Chen Feng's powerful axe strike forced Odin to retract the Spear of Eternity, his divine power instantly pouring into Ganyo, causing his size to increase dramatically. He fearlessly met Chen Feng's giant axe head-on. The two collided. A violent roar erupted, and terrifying shockwaves shattered everything in Zhou. Inch by inch, everything crumbled. The deafening sound made everyone in Zhou cover their ears, their faces filled with horror. The Spear of Eternity, contained within Odin's divine power, blocked Chen Feng's fierce attack. However, Odin's entire aura was firmly suppressed by Chen Feng. Forced to defend passively, he had lost the right to launch an attack. You human! How could the mighty king of the gods lose to you? Odin roared in fury. At that moment, his divine power surged forth, emanating from beneath him, the very air trembling, a boundless divine force sweeping in all directions. It was almost the entirety of Odin's power. Chen Feng was suddenly blasted away by this even more powerful divine force. Because of this surge of divine power, the entire sky paled, a massive rift opened in the heavens, and endless clouds billowed forth. Dark clouds gathered, and a fierce wind howled. Chen Feng was slightly startled. He hadn't expected Odin, unleashing his power once more, to be so terrifying. It should be said, worthy of being the king of the gods. His majesty as king of the gods was unyielding, allowing no one to challenge him. The divine power within Odin's body gathered in his palm, condensing into a sphere. Chapter 46 Downward. His eyes seemed to radiate divine light as he hurled the sphere at Chen Feng. The divine power within the sphere surged forth, unleashing its full force. Wherever it passed, only desolate sand and gravel remained. Everything was instantly obliterated, reduced to ashes. Chen Feng watched the sphere hurtling towards him, his hand crackling with bright arcs of electricity. In a few breaths, the arcs grew enormous, instantly enveloping a 10-meter radius sizzle. Sparks flew everywhere. The arcs of electricity crisscrossed. Chen Feng condensed all the endless arcs of electricity into a sphere only 30 centimeters in diameter. Go! Chen Feng swung his arm forcefully, and the sphere was thrown out. It quickly collided with a divine power sphere. At that moment, a rift suddenly appeared at the point of impact, pulling them both into the void. The energy surged like a vast ocean. Even inside the void, a deafening roar could still be heard. The world lost its color. At this moment, the void containing the two spheres trembled, the entire space seemingly shaking, as if about to be torn apart. However, in the end, the world returned to calm. All the energy from both spheres was completely consumed within the void, without affecting the real world. This isn't over yet. Chen Feng, having unleashed most of his divine power, wasn't prepared to end the battle so easily. He took a step forward, instantly appearing before Chen Feng, divine power enveloping the eternal spear, and unleashing a tremendous force towards Chen Feng. Chen Feng refused to be outdone. He immediately gathered wind in front of him, blocking the eternal spear's attack. At the same moment, the power of time was unleashed again, freezing Odin in place, while lightning flickered and danced in Chen Feng's hand. A raging storm of lightning struck Odin, almost piercing through the divine power protecting his body, nearly penetrating his collar. The attack failed. Odin quickly recovered. A thought struck him, and his divine power surged forth again, attacking Chen Feng with overwhelming force. A sudden rift appeared, drawing all the divine power into the void. A sword aura, seemingly capable of destroying everything, roared out. A sense of danger arose in Odin's heart, forcing him to defend. Chen Feng and Odin exchanged blows, each unleashing their strongest techniques, attacking each other relentlessly. Odin relied on his formidable divine power and unbreakable divine body, while Chen Feng relied more on his versatile hero moves and abilities. This extremely flexible switching and combination left even Odin bewildered, unable to grasp Chen Feng's patterns. And yet, it was impossible to defend against. Even after Odin unleashed most of his power, he was still evenly matched with Chen Feng, unable to gain the upper hand. This caused Odin to lose his usual composure, becoming increasingly anxious. If word got out that he had been reduced to this state by a human, he would no longer be worthy of being the ruler of the Nine Realms. 360 was in the same boat. Due to Odin's haste, the divine power within him became increasingly unstable. The next moment, just as he was about to release his divine power, Odin's body suddenly seemed to stop functioning, and he stopped. A good opportunity, Chen Feng thought to himself, his eyes lighting up. He wouldn't let this opportunity slip by easily. He unleashed a powerful attack. Odin was like a cannonball, flying backward rapidly, finally crashing helplessly into the ground, leaving a deep chasm, completely devoid of his previous composure. How tragic. This is too much? Who could have imagined that Odin, the ruler of the Nine Realms, the king of the gods of Asgard, would be beaten so badly? Father Heimdall, open the rainbow bridge and let us go back, Thor shouted anxiously to the sky. No. Heimdall, point the rainbow bridge at us, father, don't speak, I'll take you back to Asgard right now, Thor quickly interrupted Odin, his heart aching as he looked at his pale father. This battle prematurely triggered Odin's slumber, causing his divine power to become chaotic, almost going berserk, and limiting his strength. It also gave Chen Feng the opportunity to defeat Odin. The rainbow bridge. Aimed at? Could this be? Chen Feng silently pondered Odin's words, his brow furrowed. After a long silence, Chen Feng finally understood what Odin meant. The rainbow bridge could not only perform spatial teleportation, taking Asgardian soldiers anywhere, but even more terrifyingly, the power it could unleash was almost comparable to a planet-destroying weapon, capable of destroying a planet at will, its strategic importance on par with a major power's nuclear arsenal. Therefore, Odin's words clearly meant that he intended to use the rainbow bridge's energy to destroy Earth. The god's expression changed drastically, his heart filled with uncontrollable rage. His family was still on Earth. Damn it! Was this some kind of cowardice? Just for the sake of Asgard's ethereal majesty and his pitiful pride after being defeated, he was going to kill the entire planet? What kind of rage was this? This shameful behavior, Chen Feng would not allow it to happen. As long as Odin continued to speak, even if he was the king of the gods, so what? Provoke me. I'll kill even the gods for you. Chen Feng wanted to kill Odin, leaving him forever on Earth. Far away, at the foot of the Himalayas, in Kamartaj, the Ancient One and Mordo were watching everything unfold in New Mexico. Especially after hearing Odin's last words, their expressions turned grave. Sorcerer Supreme, did you hear that? Sting is going to activate the Rainbow Bridge, a planet-destroying weapon. If it's launched at Earth, the consequences will be unimaginable, Indo anxiously asked. So what? The Ancient One remained calm, her gaze serene as she countered. We should move out now, leading all the sorcerers to New Mexico to drive Odin off Earth. Mordo looked intently at the Ancient One, whose emotions remained unmoved, and said loudly, protecting Earth is the duty of us sorcerers, Sorcerer Supreme, let me take people there. Mordo's thoughtful attitude and words moved the other sorcerers beside him, and their gazes turned to the Ancient One. They had come to Kamartaj to learn magic. Besides becoming stronger, their main task was to protect Earth. I'll think about it some more. The Ancient One shook her head, not rushing to give orders, but instead staring intently at Chen Feng, seemingly pondering something. In Chen Feng, the Ancient One seemed to see a bright future, an undying light for Earth. Moreover, judging from the battle just now, the power Chen Feng displayed was undoubtedly immense, able to fight against the God King and Odin head-on without being at a disadvantage. Even in the end, he could fight both Odins, although the main reason was that Odin's divine power was unstable, causing his strength to decline. But it must be said that Chen Feng's talent and ability are among the best on Earth. In particular, Chen Feng's mastery of time and space was something even the Ancient One deeply admired. Chapter 47 Temper. If Chen Feng could join Kamartaj to learn magic, his future achievements would be limitless. A thought suddenly occurred to the Ancient One. Sorcerer Supreme, make a decision quickly. We may not have much time left. Indu was extremely anxious. Time? Time was the worst thing right now. As long as Odin was still on Earth for even a second, the Bifrost could collapse at any moment, unleashing planet-destroying energy and annihilating the planet. Not long after disengaging from the battle, Odin's complexion gradually recovered, his weakened aura dissipating, as if he had once again become the revered king of gods. His regal bearing was undeniable. However, this was only a facade. The divine power within Odin's body had only slightly stabilized, and he could no longer wield it as freely as before. To put it bluntly, the current Odin was merely a paper tiger, all show and no substance. Hildum, heed my command, activate the Bifrost, Odin roared, his domineering tone filled with unwavering resolve, leaving no room for argument. He wanted Chen Feng and all the people of Earth to understand why Asgard was the ruler of the 9 realms, and why Odin was the king of the gods and the father of heaven. He advised, Hildum, you've already made a mistake. Do you see the thousands of dead soldiers? Don't continue making mistakes. Chen Feng snorted coldly, lightning crackling in his palm, immediately extending to the swift wind sword in his hand. The almost sky-piercing sword energy, combined with the incomparably fierce lightning, was enough to shock everyone with its terrifying aura. Odin, I don't mind leaving you on Earth forever, Chen Feng said coldly, a chilling aura emanating from him. The air temperature dropped considerably. Then, at that moment, a golden circle of light appeared silently before everyone. The mages of the ancient region of Kamaji arrived in New Mexico. They had initially thought Odin would leave, but they hadn't expected him to be so persistent and ruthless, determined to use a space-age weapon against Earth. Odin, leave Earth and return to Asgard, the Ancient One declared bluntly, her body radiating a dense aura of magic. As the Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One's current power was no less than Odin's. She wasn't afraid of Odin at all, her only concern was that this guy had gone mad and wanted to use the Bifrost to blow up Earth. Billions of lives, and countless others, how could the Ancient One not be furious? All the sorcerers around her silently chanted incantations, magical weapons appearing in their hands, all staring intently at Odin. The Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, I didn't expect your magic to have reached such a level. But compared to a planet-destroying weapon, who is stronger? Odin stepped forward, revealing a strange smile, a stubborn one. Even at this critical moment, Odin didn't want to abandon his dignity as the king of the gods, it would be too humiliating to slink back. Afterwards, how will the people of the Nine Realms laugh at us? Thor, your father is blinded by rage, and he looks like he's about to enter Odin's sleep. I hope you make the right choice, the Ancient One said calmly. She knew Sting was only saying this to save face, but she was still somewhat wary of the Fang Star weapon. There's no way. This thing is too powerful. Looked at the sky and said, Heldum, open the Rainbow Bridge and send us back to Asgard, this time. He believed that Heldum could understand the gravity of the situation, just like him. At this moment, Heldum on the Rainbow Bridge nodded. His longsword plunged down, the ground spun, and the power of the Rainbow Bridge immediately enveloped Sting, Thor, and the others. In a few breaths, their figures were formed, and they were about to leave Earth in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, the Ancient One finally relaxed. But it was only for a moment. The next moment, the Ancient One's expression changed drastically again, and she looked at Chen Feng rushing into the light with disbelief. The Ancient One was speechless. What the hell? Chen Feng, what is he doing? Are we going to Asgard together? Chen Feng, come back quickly, it's the last week. Tony also noticed this immediately and hurriedly took off his clothes. Damn it, if we go back to Asgard, wouldn't we be walking into the tiger's den? Besides, coming back would be a disaster. Tony, can you bring Chen Feng back? Nick Fury's voice came through the communicator, sounding incredibly tense and worried. It made sense. Chen Feng was Fury's chosen member of the Alliance. He couldn't let anything happen to him like this. It seemed impossible. Tony immediately rushed out at full speed, but before he could reach him, the beam vanished abruptly, leaving him with a wry smile. With the beam gone, Odin, Sol, and the others had all left Earth. Of course, there was also Chen Feng, who rushed in at the last moment. Chen Feng, what exactly are you trying to do? Guyi looked up at the sky, unable to understand or guess Chen Feng's thoughts. Sorcerer Supreme, we should go back. Mordo looked at the agents of the Goddess Bureau who were slowly approaching from the Joe Kingdom, and Tony, dressed in Iron Man suits, and said to Guyi beside him. Tony flew to a short distance in front of Guyi and questioned her word by word. Who are you? Where did you come from? However, these sorcerers didn't care about Tony at all and all looked at Guyi. Judging from your clothes, are you from India, the shamans, or something else? Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, Tony started talking to himself, reciting his knowledge of India without caring whether it was right or wrong. Guyi just glanced at Tony indifferently, and drew a large golden circle in the air with her right hand, which immediately reflected the image of Kamartaj. However, none of the people present had ever seen Kamartaj before, so they were naturally confused. All the sorcerers followed in perfect unison behind the Ancient One, entering the golden circle where light shone brightly, disappearing from sight in the blink of an eye. Tony, they just left like that. Fury, far away in the Goddess Bureau, witnessed this incredibly shocking scene, his expression one of utter astonishment. Why didn't you stop them? Stop them? How? Please, these people look like troublemakers, especially the leader. Even Odin is a threat to him. You make it sound so easy. Try stopping one yourself. What could I do? I don't know how to fight. Who knows if there's an ambush inside? Tony shrugged, somewhat dissatisfied with Nick Fury's words. After speaking, he immediately hung up the communication. Even Odin was taken away by the Ancient One, let alone an ordinary human like himself. However, Tony was still very worried about Chen Feng. That was a trip to outer space, not a casual sightseeing trip. This Tony, he really has the same attitude as Chen Feng. Fury listened to the voice coming from the other end of the phone, twitched his fingers a few times, sighed helplessly, and felt a chill run down his spine. These little devils were all such a handful. Chapter 48 blank. Notify the police in New Mexico to handle things in the town and bring our people back. They don't need to stay there any longer. After issuing a series of orders, Fury turned to leave, but suddenly stopped, as if remembering something, and continued to Agent Hill. By the way, bring Dr. Eric back with us. We might need his help. At that moment, as the Rainbow Bridge opened, Chen Feng followed closely behind Thor and the others, quickly arriving in Asgard. Thor, are you alright? Heldum rushed over as Thor appeared before him. Quick, take father back. He's about to enter the Odin slumber. Thor's voice was urgent, his face filled with worry. Hearing this, Heldum's expression changed drastically, and he quickly made way for him. Thor, carrying Odin, flew towards the palace with all his might, forgetting everything else. Zimri and the other two quickly followed. In a moment, They disappeared from the Rainbow Bridge. Heldum, needing to protect the Rainbow Bridge, naturally couldn't leave, and prayed in his heart that Thor and Odin were safe. After all, Thor hadn't fully grown yet, and Asgard's main reliance was still Odin, the king of the gods. Who is it? Just then, Heldum suddenly sensed a strange aura and quickly turned around. An earthling? Chen Feng? When Heldum saw the person's appearance, he was immediately shocked, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. What the hell? He hadn't noticed Chen Feng arrive at all. So you're Heldum now? I'm officially telling you, you don't need to stand here guarding the Rainbow Bridge anymore. Go have some fun. Chen Feng smiled, revealing a set of handsome white teeth. But the hidden meaning in his words made Heldum stare intently at Chen Feng, his grip on his longsword tightening. No need to guard it? Could it be that Chen Feng's purpose was to destroy the Rainbow Bridge? Whatever it was, Heldum knew it couldn't be anything good. Heldum, here's a piece of advice, don't try to stop me. Chen Feng stood there, his immense aura rising, his banner billowing into the sky, commanding respect. His words were undeniably domineering. Heldum was horrified. Only then did Heldum finally recall the battle between Chen Feng and Odin, and how Chen Feng had annihilated all the Asgardian soldiers with 2 sword strikes. God of slaughter. Heldum had witnessed these battles clearly, and they were deeply etched into his memory. So when Chen Feng uttered those threatening words, Heldum felt utterly devastated, a faint thought of retreat creeping into his heart. No. I am a Asgard warrior, the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge. I will not allow you to do this. This thought of retreat quickly vanished. Heldum suddenly roared in fury, mustered her courage, and brandished her longsword, charging towards Chen Feng. Suddenly, a ray of ice appeared behind Heldum, freezing him completely without any resistance, turning him into an ice statue. Loki, wearing a golden crown, slowly emerged from behind Heldum, chuckling, HMPH, finding an opportunity is really not easy. In Loki's hand was the energy source of the frost giants, the ancient winter coffin. Earthling, I didn't expect you to come to Asgard. I don't know whether to praise your courage or if you've lost your mind. Loki's eyes were unabashedly sarcastic, showing no regard for Chen Feng. I thought I'd have to deal with 2, but now there's only 1 left. It's all thanks to your resourcefulness. Chen Feng glanced at him, seemingly unsurprised, clearly having already noticed Loki's lurking presence. You idiot, you weakling human. Loki was enraged by Chen Feng's words, the ice box in his hand emitting a bone-chilling cold. Chen Feng scoffed, you don't actually think you can defeat me with this thing, do you? Of course not, I also have my power. Loki laughed wildly, seizing the moment when Chen Feng relaxed. He launched a sudden attack, the ice box emitting a beam of energy containing extreme cold. Although Loki had witnessed Odin and Thor being defeated by Chen Feng, he still believed he could defeat him. After all, Odin's divine power was unstable at that time, and Thor had only just regained Mjolnir and become Thor again. Loki believed there was an element of luck involved, not entirely due to Chen Feng's strength. Furthermore, Loki is fundamentally different from Thor, his forte is magic, not melee combat. This is one reason for Loki's confidence, along with the icebox he carries. This is the energy source of the frost giants. Its strength is not to be underestimated. Ridiculous. A cold glint flashed in Chen Feng's eyes. His aura surged skyward. The next moment, a sword intent carrying the power to destroy the heavens and the earth was released, shattering the air wherever it landed, directly clashing with the frost ray. A shockwave rippled through the air. The frost ray from the frost box collided with a terrifying sword energy, and the explosion of energy silenced the entire world. Then, a deafening roar erupted on the Rainbow Bridge. The void trembled. Gusts of wind swept in all directions, engulfing Chen Feng and Loki, ruffling their hair. How could you be so strong? Loki's eyes were filled with shock. Nonsense. How could I not be shocked? As the energy source of the frost giants, the frostbox is so powerful that it could freeze the earth into an ice age. Even Odin in his prime would have had a hard time dealing with it. But now, Chen Feng's seemingly effortless sword strike had disintegrated the frost ray. Holy crap, is this some kind of overpowered technique? Loki's eyes widened. This terrifying strength had already made Loki wary, and his confidence was no longer what it once was. Actually, it wasn't that the ice box wasn't powerful enough, but rather that Loki's strength was insufficient. He hadn't reached the level of the ice giant, so naturally he couldn't unleash the icebox's true power. The two faced each other. The next moment, Loki vanished from Chen Feng's sight. He reappeared behind Chen Feng in an instant. The ice box in his hand emitted a chilling light, and a terrifying and awe-inspiring energy erupted, unleashing an even larger ice ray. The ice swept through. Wherever it passed, the air was frozen solid, even the void itself. An overwhelming chill swept out, as if the entire Rainbow Bridge was frozen. Isn't that obvious? Even your father wasn't my match, let alone you. All you've done is in vain. Chen Feng's face remained calm, but a dazzling arc of lightning suddenly appeared in his hand, blooming like a lotus flower and shooting into the sky, filling a 5-meter radius with flashing lightning. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Reason. The icy ray, upon approaching the lightning, was struck by its violent force, turning the entire icy ray into dust. A deafening roar of lightning and thunder filled the air. The sky-covering lightning, like a ferocious beast, surged towards Loki, its terrifying power striking his body. At that moment, Loki's body, charred from the outside, even emitted a faint, pungent aroma of flesh. Shut. Loki reappeared at the end of the Rainbow Bridge, looking at his charred clone, and said with lingering fear, "That damned monster. Luckily, I was smart enough not to use my real body against him, as the god of planning, and the most intelligent god in Asgard. Loki naturally wouldn't directly confront Chen Feng. Instead, he sent his clone to probe Chen Feng's strength. The result of this probe undoubtedly made him tense, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Trying to think of how to defeat Chen Feng, Loki could only come up with one answer: impossible. Yes, absolutely impossible. With Loki's current strength, he simply couldn't defeat Chen Feng. Even with countless schemes, they were all just a joke in the face of absolute power. If there was no other way, he could only try to lure him away and approach him stealthily. In the end, this was the only relatively safe method in Loki's mind. He had heard every word Odin said on Earth. So, for the sake of his throne, Loki decided to use the power of the Bifrost to destroy Earth. It was just a small planet, none of his concern. Destroying it would avenge Odin and fulfill his wish. Maybe? When Odin awoke from his slumber, he would look at him with newfound respect. He would then be in a favorable position in the struggle for the throne. A little sabotage against Thor would make the throne his forte. Loki was getting a little excited. Moreover, Loki wanted to activate the Bifrost to destroy Jotunheim and erase his shameful history. He would be the future king of Hogwarts, not a descendant of the ice giants. Chen Feng, do you think this defeats me? Loki reappeared before Chen Feng, a sharp dagger in his hand, and said, "I will show you what a true god is. Just how strong is he?" Chen Fengzi coldly stared at Loki, a faint gust of wind swirling around the blade of his Gale sword. Before Loki could react, a lightning-fast sword aura swept out, slicing through Loki's waist. Loki's eyes widened as he stared at his body split in two, his veins clenching in disbelief. Damn it, he was killed so quickly, I hadn't even taken 2 steps. At the end of the Rainbow Bridge, Loki saw his clone not even last 3 seconds and couldn't help but curse under his breath. He was still nearly 400 meters away from the control center of the Rainbow Bridge. At this rate of killing, he would probably have to summon tens of thousands of clones to reach him. Chen Fengzi flashed forward, looking at Loki in front of him, and said coldly, "Loki, should I say you're being clever, or are you just setting a trap?" "What? How did you get discovered?" Chen Feng's sudden appearance shocked Loki, who even suddenly retreated. As a mage, Loki understood that if Chen Feng got close, he would surely die. Maintaining distance was an eternal truth that every mage must remember throughout their life. Chen Feng grabbed Loki. "No need. I don't intend to kill you. I want you to witness the greatest event in Asgardian history. You want to catch me? Dream on." Loki wasn't about to give up easily. His divine power surged, rapidly increasing his speed as he dashed away. However, Chen Feng was faster, grabbing Loki by the neck and lifting him up. Loki was terrified and almost cried. "Loki, as the first person to witness this, you should feel incredibly honored, not like this with a crying face." Chen Feng glanced at him disdainfully, then carried Loki to the control center of the Rainbow Bridge. The power of time immobilized Loki. Chen Feng walked onto the Rainbow Bridge, a giant axe appearing in his hand. Chen Feng adjusted his mental state to its peak, channeling all the power within his body into the giant axe, releasing an incomparably terrifying aura. An aura surpassing all else shook the heavens and earth. This axe strike carried the power to split the heavens and earth, an unstoppable force. Chen Feng swung the giant axe with all his might. That strike, with tremendous force, slammed into the rainbow bridge, producing a deafening roar. Loki, impacted by the aftershocks, had his face contorted in agony, a look of pain on his face. Even the time-binding power binding Loki was loosened by the powerful sound wave. Loki was able to move his hands, and the divine power within him slowly surged forth. However, Chen Feng paid no heed to any of this. The axe, heavy as Mount Tai, struck the rainbow bridge. After several blows, countless cracks appeared on the rainbow bridge, rapidly expanding outwards. Another axe strike. The surface of the rainbow bridge began to shatter, the cracks becoming increasingly pronounced. It seemed as if another axe blow could shatter the rainbow bridge at any moment. Just then, due to the continuous sonic booms, the time-binding force binding Loki was finally completely dissipated, and Loki regained his freedom. He saw the rainbow bridge about to be severed by Chen Feng. No. Stop right now, Loki roared, charging forward, a sharp axe gripping his hand. Damn it. This damned human. Loki's eyes blazed with fury. He wouldn't allow Chen Feng to destroy the rainbow bridge, or his plans would be completely ruined, and the fight for the throne would be out of the question. For the throne. For becoming the master of Asgard. Even if Chen Feng was strong? So what? Now, Loki, blinded by rage, was like a gambler who had lost a bet, no longer caring about anything else. He would stop Chen Feng at any cost. His eyes were bloodshot. His lust for power had almost driven Loki mad. But Chen Feng ignored him completely, not even glancing at him. He swung his giant axe at a 590-degree angle, bringing it down with tremendous force. Then, before Loki could arrive, the rainbow bridge shattered. Only the endless abyss remained. No. Witnessing this, Loki's eyes widened in fury, his face trembling with rage. It's over. It's all over. My throne, master of Asgard. Loki's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he looked at Chen Feng. Die? This human deserves to die. Enraged, Loki thrust his seven-headed sword at Chen Feng's chest. Ant tree, Chen Feng said coldly, his eyes filled with disbelief. I'll send you on your way. Chapter 50 Trouble. Just as the dagger was about to strike, Chen Feng suddenly dodged backward, avoiding Loki's attack. His right weapon struck Loki squarely in the back. Like a chariot shattering in midair, a tremendous force surged into Loki's body. Under the force of the blow, Loki screamed, losing control of his body, and finally plummeted towards the abyss. Loki, a figure in a bright red cloak, Thor, rushed over, trying to save Loki. In fact, the loud sound of Chen Feng severing the rainbow symbol shook the entire Asgard. Everyone noticed the commotion, including Thor. So, after settling Odin, Thor immediately rushed to the rainbow bridge. But by the time he arrived, the rainbow bridge was already broken. Now, the only thing Thor could do was save Loki. After all, this was his brother. It was absolutely impossible for Thor to watch Loki die. Arriving at lightning speed, Thor grabbed Loki's hand the instant he fell off the rainbow bridge. Loki, I've got you. Come on up. Thor struggled with all his might to pull Loki up, his face flushed red, veins bulging on his forehead. Grab his hand now, pull hard. Unfortunately, after the rainbow bridge was severed, Loki seemed to lose all faith, his world crumbling, utterly dejected. Will you pull me up and leave me in Torgus to watch him become the new king? No, Loki, would rather die than see that happen. Thor, thank you. Loki stepped forward, a complex expression on his face. Then, under Thor's incredulous gaze, he released his right hand. He fell into the abyss. Vanished. No. Loki, Thor roared into the abyss, knowing that everything was beyond repair. Chen Feng, his eyes narrowed, watched the brothers' bromance with boredom, and yawned. A series of battles. A little tired. Now he should think about how to return to Earth. Chen Feng, why did you take Loki down? After a while, Thor looked at Chen Feng with a stern face and questioned him. Thor, didn't you see? He attacked me first. I was just defending myself. Besides, you didn't catch him, so why blame me? Chen Feng shrugged dismissively, completely unconcerned about Loki. Thor was speechless. What you said makes a lot of sense, but something still feels off. Speaking of which, could I use Cassidin's special abilities to teleport myself back to Earth? Maybe I should try it. After muttering to himself, Chen Feng waved his hand, and the void around his body suddenly changed. The next moment, a spatial rift appeared beside Chen Feng. This startled Thor, who thought Chen Feng was going to fight him, but Chen Feng simply turned around and entered the rift, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Thor. Chen Feng couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He felt incredibly guilty. It wasn't nervousness he felt earlier, it really wasn't. He wondered when he, the god of war of Asgard, had ever treated a human so harshly. As expected, it won't work. Immediately, Chen Feng returned to the Rainbow Bridge, his eyes filled with disappointment. Although Kassadin also possessed the ability to control space, the space he could traverse was shallow and short range, he was still lacking the necessary skill to return to Earth from Asgard. If only I had the Space Stone. At this moment, Chen Feng was even more eager to obtain the Space Stone. With that, he would be like a tiger with a ton of bricks, able to travel freely through the universe without any restrictions. Chen Feng looked at Thor and asked, "Thor, you're still here? Perfect. Does Asgard have any other way to send me back to Earth?" This sudden question caught Thor off guard, and a surge of anger welled up inside him. Damn it. When you cut down the Rainbow Bridge, why didn't you think about whether you could go home? What's the use of saying this kind of hindsight nonsense now? No, Thor said decisively. No, then I'll just have to stay in Asgard for a while. If you get itchy, you'd better find a few people to help me out, otherwise I'll only be able to practice on Asgard, Chen Feng said as he walked towards Asgard, still treating himself as a guest. Hearing this, Thor suddenly wanted to curse. Damn it. Can you not be so blatantly threatening? At this moment, Thor realized how wrong he had been. He had clearly raised a tyrant in Asgard. Thor quickly chased after them, completely forgetting about Hildum, still frozen in ice, watched Thor and Chen Feng walk away, tears welling up in his eyes. Not long after Chen Feng left, a golden circle of light appeared before him, revealing a snow-white mountain range opposite. Chen Feng curiously looked at it, quite intrigued. Chen Feng, come back, a gentle female voice suddenly came from inside, making Chen Feng pause for a moment. Who are you, and what is this place? Chen Feng asked a series of questions. He wouldn't step inside until he understood. If it's a trap, you'll have to be careful. I am the Guardian of Earth, the Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One. This is Kamar-chan at the foot of the Himalayas, Ancient One explained slowly. Hearing this, Chen Feng finally felt more at ease and prepared to enter the container. So, it seems I can't play in Asgard this time. Then come again next time, and you must treat me well then. With that, Chen Feng stepped into the golden circle of light, and suddenly the light disappeared. Even Chen Feng's aura vanished from Asgard. Chen Feng's last words left Thor speechless, a bit of a headache. First time here. And he's already cut the Rainbow Bridge. Next time, will he have to tear down the gods too? And treat them well? If he could, Thor would never want to see Chen Feng, this godlike figure, again. Not long after Chen Feng left, Thor returned to the broken Rainbow Bridge, gazing at the pitch-black abyss below, his eyes shimmering. He thought of Jane, far away on Earth. Without the Rainbow Bridge, he wondered if he would ever see her again. He stared for a long time. Thor sighed, then returned to Asgard. Odin had fallen into hibernation, Loki had fallen into the abyss, and now he had to shoulder the burden of returning to Asgard himself. Thor suddenly felt the burden on his shoulders grow heavier. This incident made him acutely aware of his own inadequacy and immaturity. The severing of the Rainbow Bridge, while eliminating the threat to Earth and preventing the ice giants from entering Asgard, also halted the departure of Asgardian soldiers. The Nine Realms, now under Asgard's rule, might soon descend into chaos. Thor perhaps hadn't yet realized the immense trouble Chen Feng's act of severing the Rainbow Bridge would bring to Asgard and the Nine Realms. At that moment, stepping into the golden light, Chen Feng instantly arrived at Kamartaj. Standing before him was a woman in a robe, the very same Ancient One who had suddenly appeared during his battle with Odin. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.